Move in there.
What's up with my thing?
Well, you already said it. You just wanted the retreat, so we don't want to sell it before then.
I
Right?
know.
No one left.
Of course. No one said you could go home.
Still got 5 hours.
Have to wait on Dick.
No.
All right. Says we're good.
You good?
Dave, we're good? All right. All right, action item number 12, we reconvene from executive session into open session to act as deemed appropriate in city council's discretion regarding A, consultation with legal counsel and possible action concerning any regular meeting agenda item requiring confidential attorney-client advice. We will now move into, we reconvened, I'm sorry, at 9 PM. So now we're at, back to the top of our order here, citizen comments. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council is prohibited from acting or discussing other than factual responses to specific questions, any items not on the agenda. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on something that is not on our agenda? All right, we will go to items of community interest. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, the City Council may report on any of the following items: expressions of thanks, gratitude, and condolences, information regarding holiday schedules, recognition of individuals, reminders regarding City Council events, reminders regarding community events, health and safety announcements.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to just mention that Veterans Day is on November 11th at 11 o'clock out here at Memorial Park, right outside City Hall. We will be honoring our veterans. So it's going to be that way moving forward on the 11th month, the 11th day, and the 11th hour moving forward. So anyone is welcome to attend out in the park right outside.
Anyone else? You have anything? I don't think I have anything. Other than I want to thank everybody that went out and voted on Tuesday for obvious reasons. All right, public hearing. Public hearing and possible action. First consideration. The Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing and consider an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending a portion of the current Marshall's Harbor Planned Development District, PDD, hereinafter to be referred to as the Water Lights Planned Development District, PDD, in order to modify the uses and development regulations specifically applicable to the following property: Lot 44, Lot 45, Lot 47, Lot 48, Lot 49AA, Lot 50, Lot 52 through Lot 54, Lot 57, Lot 58, Lot 60 through Lot 66, and Lot 68 through Lot 73 of Marshall's Harbor subdivision. And I will open the public hearing at 9:02 p.m. And Roy gets the lead.
Yes, sir. I guess the first thing that needs to be mentioned is that after the notification letters and the advertisement and everything happened, we did somewhat late in the game receive a revocation of the authority of one of the property owners. That involves Lot 62. Had we had that in time, that would not be shown on your maps, and the opposition letter that she then drafted would have been included in your packet. And of course, it would have also been calculated in the 20% opposition to whether it triggered a supermajority, but that occurred without her participation, so that seemed to be a moot point. I guess a little more than an hour ago, the Planning Commission considered this and forwarded a recommendation on a 4-3 vote for approval with some clarifications. Primarily, there is some language in there that was intended to apply only to the lots that are in that application. They didn't think that was clear enough. We'll make that change if you agree, to make sure that that's clear, that nothing in this application changes an existing approval that was not part of it. They also wanted to make sure that the reference to R2 included R2 two-family development standards, not R2 single-family. And that was their recommendation. I'm not sure what else I can add. It was a fairly long meeting, but it's probably best if I just simply wait and respond to your questions and let the folks that are here speak. Yes, sir.
Opposition?
I'm
What's
sorry?
the percentage of opposition?
We quit at 40-something%, which is the first, once it's over 20, we don't finish. But his first notice to us was at 46-point-something%. It did not include Ms. Cudgel, and on behalf of the trust. But I think, do you have the spreadsheet or is it just the email that gives you the
Just
total?
have the email.
Yeah.
So that'll take 6.
Yes, you need a supermajority, and all we know is it's well over the 20%. Details was not our primary concern.
And Roy, the property ownership, 75%, that's been met for the application?
No.
No?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I mean, other than on behalf of the trust, everything that you see in the application, the list of lots, take lot 62 out. The rest of it is there.
Mr. Mayor, there's not a 75% ownership requirement for this rezoning application. The application has to be submitted by either the property owners or their representative.
That's the proxies?
Yes, sir.
How many of them are proxies?
I have a spreadsheet that shows where I went and verified, either the ownership, or if somebody wasn't the registered owner with the Secretary of State. There was one gentleman I had to get to provide additional authorization. He signed on behalf of a limited partnership, but he had the documents which were dated long ago. The Secretary of State didn't have it. He was he was a CFO of the organization, but he wasn't the one listed as their registered agent. But he is. He had the authority. I have the documentation if you'd like to see it. That was the only one that was questionable. Everybody else was listed on TCAT.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Roy? Right. So we have the applicant at this point. Would you like to come forward?
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. City Manager, and city staff. We're delighted to be here and welcome the opportunity to present our Water Lights PDD. And of course, we're seeking your unanimous approval tonight. I also want to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission for their vote this evening. It was a robust discussion, and I believe that our zoning request is really going to improve this property. As you know, this property's been there for 10 years without any growth. And our proposal is simply to maneuver the zoning so that we have condominiums, residential homes, and a hotel, which have all been approved before on this property. We want to simply shuffle it around a little bit because we got to get the hotel down to the water to make it feasible. So what we've done is we've created a new master plan that we want to share with you tonight. Okay? we believe the master plan is much improved, and it's got a grand vision for the future of North Shore. I think with the timely consolidation of the 17 lots that we've put together tonight, or put together over the last, 6 months, tonight we're going to show you how this consolidation can make for a very nice, cohesive community. And with that community, we believe you're going to turn into a very good, robust economy, and the opportunity is ripe for development right now because the overall economy is doing quite well. So on North Shore, I think we have the best solution for this property in many, many years, and we're hoping that you see the same. But what I'd like to do is go through some slides and show you that. But before I do that, I'd like to introduce you to the rest of our team. And to do that, we have several people here that are going to speak tonight. And I think David would be the first one I'd like to bring up, and then have David turn it over to Lori. So if I may, turn it over to our team.
You may.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. My name is David Goswick, and I'm proud to say that I was born in Austin. I'm a 7th generation Texan. And my mom and I go back and forth of what you call a 7th generation Texan. I'm also pleased to be a dad and a grandfather, so we have 8th and 9th generation Texans coming. But over the years, for 35 years, I've had the privilege of working with the largest and most successful real estate developers in the United States and home builders. But about 2.5 years ago, I got contacted by Brian Atlas and a couple of consultants, and we're frequently brought in to solve complex problems. And in the early 90s, we represented the federal government and the RTC in the liquidation of the largest number of real estate assets in the United States, about $45 billion in real estate. Very, very complex situations. I thought I'd seen everything, but we hadn't. So what I'd like to do is introduce a new complex situation and explain how this team got here. So when Mr. Atlas contacted me, I didn't really know him. I didn't know the property. I knew of Lago Vista. And the first thing that we would do is look at a Google Earth map. And earlier in planning and zoning, someone made a comment that when you fly over, it looks like a desert. It looks a little bit like a desert, but there's a few homes scattered within the property. And the first question is why? And how do we address that? So as we started meeting with Mr. Atlas and looking at the situation, it looked like a puzzle with a lot of pieces missing. And so there were a lot of out parcels that needed to be assembled. And as you all are probably aware, assembling 17 properties from 15 property owners or 14 property owners is very, very difficult. So I turned to my strategic partner and 45-year veteran of the real estate land development world, Gary Cobb, and said, let's go assemble these properties, get control of them so that we can create a plan. If we do not execute on this now, I don't ever see this thing happening again. Putting this back together would be next to impossible. So specifically, we don't need to go into the out parcels yet, but I will also say that representing these developers across the United States, and virtually every one of them in Texas at some point, it gives me a Rolodex to reach out and ask, what do you think about this opportunity? And almost without exception, these Texas developers would say, yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it. It's got a lot of hair on it, a lot of issues. But we kept going. But I also want to show what happens when property is left unattended and it's just open. So my mom, her 86th birthday was September 23rd, and she knows that we've been pouring our passion into this development for 2.5 years, trying to put this together. She wanted to see it. This was her birthday wish. So we brought her to the property, got her in the truck, and drove her. And the next few slides, I want to show what she saw, along with spectacular views of water and spectacular views from the Texas Hill Country. But this is scattered on not one property owners, but on a bunch. And so it looks neglected. And she's like, wow, but easy to correct. So with that said, after all these Texas developers and builders from Texas giving me the same comment, we've looked at this, it's complicated, come back at another time. We felt like we needed someone from the outside to take a look at it. This is not uncommon. We've had a lot of experience where it takes someone from the outside with fresh eyes that's not afraid of complex situations. And I had the privilege of getting to know Bill Nord and Lori Nicole Nord over the years. And Lori has a 25-year history experience as a mortgage banker, and Bill Nord is a renowned hospitality architect. He is Michael Jordan, he is Da Vinci, he is the man. He is the man. I had the privilege of attending an international hospitality event called Meet the Money, because if there's not money, it doesn't happen. And it was nice to come in with fresh eyes to this event. I'd never been to this hospitality event. And walking around this event with every major player in the world in the hospitality sector wanting to get next to me because I was next to Bill. So when you start looking at the accomplishments and what he has impacted, master plan, land planner within the boulders in Arizona, Four Seasons True North, Scottsdale, Arizona, a Four Seasons hotel, True North, Scottsdale, Arizona. The Encore, architect of record for Steve Wynn and the renowned Wynn Hotel, Encore Hotel in Las Vegas. Developer of Hard Rock, Hyatt Regency Resort in Huntington Beach, California, and currently working on the most complex challenge I've ever heard of, a 9 million square foot hotel, JW Marriott, another hotel, casino, 24 restaurants. But it was a stall project because we all know what happened in 2008. A lot of projects got stalled. So I went to the Nords and found that they were also being recruited for another location in the area, on the water, on the other side. And I said, let's start looking at this and building a team around it. So I don't want I'd like to introduce Lori Nord at this time to share the vision and introduce the other team members. And I'm going to come back in a few minutes.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here and present this evening. One of the things that I specifically wanted to talk about, besides, more about our background, was certainly our why. And our why is family. I think I've read each of you that have posted your platforms, and your commitment, obviously, to your community is here. But y'all talk about family, and that's what's critically important. To me, my grandmother was the matriarch of our family. She passed away about 10 years ago at the age of 94, but she was the glue, and she's what kept our family together. And it's been a passion of ours. The last 10 years of my career has been spent in the wellness sector. So I do have a skincare company. It's sold in the United States, Canada, and China. It's been very successful, but what it did was it took me into the wellness sector. I serve as a chairperson for Global Wellness Institute, and so many of their theories on what makes a community thrive is what we've tried to interlace into the vision that we have for Watermark, or Waterlights. Excuse me. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about our team. when I mentioned my grandmother, first of all, what I want to make sure that you understand is the plan for this community is to have full life cycle housing. So that whether you're starting out as a new couple, you want to buy your first home, is there something within the community that you can live in and be close to your family? As you are now starting a new family, but you don't have a huge house, or now you're an empty nester, or you're at that place in your career where you want the big executive home. Those opportunities are for you. But then again, don't age out of your community. Have something for the elderly, active senior center, so that they can be in the community as well. What we found in the theories of the blue zones and global wellness and so forth is that intergenerational community and a sense of community is what the focus is for longevity for people in their lifetime. There's actually a study that's been proven that if you put a retirement home next to a playground, the people that live there live exponentially longer just by hearing children laugh. And that's the kind of community we're striving for, is a community that involves everyone. As a part of our team, it was referenced what our experience is. And so as a part of our team, what we've done is we've put together best in class. I'd like to introduce Kelly Dyer, who's our Chief Development Officer. Will you come up, please?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Council members, pardon me. Mr. Williams had the opportunity to hear me earlier.
So I don't want to say anything that I've already said, but I do need to repeat a couple of things. I've been in the residential development and home building business for 46 plus years. And I've seen all types of developments, built golf courses. And so there's been some question about, do we have a development team? We do. And we have a full list. I think this is in your document of engineers and local guys that have been working in Austin and the surrounding areas for quite a few years. And we're very confident, and we have a utility a group out of Houston, attorneys that work on MUDs and TERS and all different pieces of that pie. And so I think we've kind of put together a good development team to make sure once we start, and as was said, we need your support for this, and we've been working on it real hard, and we know there's more to do, but that comes at the platting, preliminary plat stage and the plat part of it. But we've got our master plan concept together and spent a lot of time on it. So we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. I was in a family business from 71 to 88. And then, as I said earlier, 88 came and there was nothing to do. So I had to go get a real job. And I went to Florida, which was, didn't know there was a depression or recession going on, because they had Disney and they had all the stuff going on with Disney and the surrounding theme parks. And that went great for 4 years. And I had the opportunity to come back home in 92 and be back in the central Texas market. And I worked for regional builders and some local guys early on. And then I got kind of into the public home building department of our business. I was division president and region president for several builders. And then when the age started creeping up on me, they said, you need to do something else. That happens. And so I got into the land, which I always was. I had to buy land and sell land. We didn't have the opportunity a lot of nowadays to have landmen that work for us. So I took on that side of the business. And I'd always, like I said, our family business did that for a long time. We bought and sold properties in Central Texas and developed subdivisions, some close by here, some in San Antonio, all over the 4 out of 5 major metropolitan areas. But so in 2018, I left, after a buyout, I left my public company and went on my own as a consultant. And I was working with developers and builders and architects and lenders. And I've been doing that. About that same time that I started doing it, David Goswick and Gary Cobb, who I've known for many years and have worked with them in the companies that I worked with, asked me if I'd take a look at this project and help them kind of determine what best uses and what we could do to make it go. And so I've been doing that for the past, really the since February, but before that, we had quite a few discussions about it. Gary and I have a history of going back to even to 1978 in Houston when I worked there in our family business. And Gary was involved in probably one of the first master plan communities in the state, Mission Bend in Houston. And we were just a builder in that situation. But so Gary and I, we went back a long way. So that was part of the reason Gary called. David was our corporate representative for marketing. And he managed, his company managed 25 markets for us in marketing. And with Ryland Homes, big public company, very successful. I managed Houston and Austin. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is that this team didn't just happen. We strategically, we've hired people now. We've got engineers and legal team that'll help us, you know, take the ball to the finish line, because I know there's been a lot of question about this. This project started a long time ago. But it's not my goal. This is my last project. This is not my goal to not see this thing to fruition. So, you know, it's I've been doing it a long time, and it's just part of my driving force to get it done. I met Bill and Lori probably in February of this year. They came and looked at another property that I was kind of involved with, trying to do some consulting work for. And then David and Gary suggested that she come out and see the Lago property. And immediately both said, this is the place we want to be. I mean, this has all the callings in the world to put a nice resort facility in, and to build nice homes. These are not going to be inexpensive homes. They'll be nice. I've talked to 20+ builders who are excited about this and want to see it happen. And even a local builder of yours that used to work with me and I've known for a while. He builds 18 to 20 houses here. I think he has in the last 3 or 4 years. It's Craftsman Homes. He's voiced an opinion that he'd like to build here. Drees Homes, just a few, we don't usually talk about who we're talking to, but they've given us permission to use their name. Drees Homes, Toll Brothers, Trendmaker, all strong quality builders. And I think that's important to kind of choose who we put in the community. We know that'll build and warrant what they build. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is supplying a roof over people's heads that they can be excited about. But, you know, we've also, if we are interested, we've been given a slot to be in the Greater Austin Parade of Homes for 2021. And that does nothing but get a lot of attention from a lot of people across the country and across the state primarily. And getting them down here to see what's going on and see Lago Vista, they're going to spend money at the restaurants, and you know, they'll be here, and I think they'll be an asset. I know we don't have the hotel yet, but you know, next time we'll have another parade. But so that's kind of my story. I've taken enough of your time. I appreciate your time, and I'd like to hand it back over to David Goswick.
Thank you.
Kelly, thank you very much. So we have the support of an unbelievable team, and to pull this development off is to take this great team. But I wanted to share a little bit of past experience of what this team has worked on projects. And usually it's when it's a greenfield and it's a blank canvas to grow up into something. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's a stalled project on several occasions. We were brought in 1993 for Barton Creek and Barton Creek Lakeside to reposition it. So it was a failed project that needed a turnaround, had a new corporate sponsor. Steiner Ranch, when Taylor Woodrow bought the balance of Steiner Ranch, we were brought in to represent Steiner Ranch. When the clubs at Cordillera Ranch, and it was about 12,000 acres of land in Bernie. We were brought in to help name it, brand it, grow it. We did our job. Our job is to work our way out of a job. And then several years later, in 2003, the developer came back and said, hey, we're thinking about creating the clubs at Cordier Ranch with Jack Nicklaus. Would you come help put that together? And we did. And I think it's one of the gold standards for developments of its kind. Cimarron Hills was on the ropes, and we were brought in to try and defib it. We were brought in because the Austin Area Builders Association was having the parade of homes up there, and they felt like that may be an opportunity. I think we had about 35 to 40,000 people that paid to attend to tour the homes, and we had Jack Nicklaus out there. And along the way, getting involved in the community is really, really important. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this, we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe this has tremendous potential. But in order to do that, our due diligence is, what is this community like? And what we discovered is it's wonderful. It's incredible. We found a similar situation in Georgetown. This is a program that we put together, a fundraiser, selected an artist. Nathan Chapman was the first soldier killed in Afghanistan. And we put together a program to honor him and seed the development of that. We selected the artist, and the Perot Foundation came in as the lead sponsor of that. But I wanted to share that community involvement is absolutely critical. In Houston, or the Houston area, the RTC took over Bentwater. We helped the developer relaunch it. It's in Conroe. Conroe is one of the fastest growing areas in the United States. It's a country club upscale development on Lake Conroe. So a lot of characteristics that carry over. The Woodlands, when George Mitchell sold the Woodlands, we were brought in to help the Woodlands go from, don't hold me to the exact numbers, but 700 home sales to almost 2,000 a year for a period of time. Royal Oaks Country Club, a developer from California, came to our offices and said, we're going to build a golf course development on a municipal airport. And again, I thought I'd seen everything, but this was different. And so I called a friend of mine, Jim Nance, CBS Sports, Fred Couples. We'd put together a charity event for their charity platform for many years. They came in and really turned on Royal Oaks Country Club. Stonegate's one of the largest developers in Texas. Their unique play is technology. And then the Houston Heights, my great-grandfather developed Woodland Heights, and Houston launched it in 1907, so it's kind of in our blood. But this is a bungalow home that we built in a neglected section of Houston called Independence Heights. And we worked with the mayor and the council to create something quite special that I'll elaborate on. But in Pearland, Texas, we launched a version of water lights. And I wanted to proactively explain what we were creating was a presidential park at water lights, contiguous to a development that we also represented that was 3,500 acres, and 12,000 homes are built there. And we had 4 years in a row of selling 1,000 homes per year in this development. Highly, highly successful. This development was going to be 50 acres next to 3,500 acres that we finished. David Addix is a 93-year-old renowned artist. If you're familiar with the Sam Houston statue, the statue of Sam Houston in Huntsville, if you ever driven 45, David Addix is the artist. He has statues of every president. All of those statues are going to Huntsville for a public park. Okay. But we had them, we were going to put it here. But something happened in 2008, September of 2008. Certainly I'll never forget it. Certainly my wife will never forget it. But we're in New York working with our money partners, and Lehman Brothers filed bankruptcy on a Sunday evening. And 5 days later, our bank, Wachovia, was gone. $16.8 billion withdrawn. So my point is 2008 collapsed. This did not work out. But I don't know, we represented the largest liquidation of real estate assets in the history of the United States. Hopefully, it will never happen again. But I can tell you, if you're in this business very long, you'll have a blemish. That's mine. But Shadow Creek Ranch is probably the most profitable development in the history of Texas. After that, we put together the program in Houston Heights that I referenced. Obviously, Mayor Parker came out, unveiled these spectacular, beautiful bungalow homes that were featuring next generation technology. We convinced AT&T on their nickel to come in and put fiber optics in the community. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, without us soliciting them, they came in and invested in the community. Amazon just put their first 365 store of its kind in the community. Highly, highly, highly successful. But what happened was Bloomberg Television, on their own, unsolicited, recognized this as really leading the next generation of housing. So they came and did a news feature, a 6-minute news feature. It ran around the world for a period of time. Each one of those red dots represents someone wanting to buy a home like this. Each one of those red dots. That was over a 45-day period. We had 15,000 people. My point in that is we would not be involved in this community if we didn't know it was absolutely doable and executed properly. And I went to the team that could execute this and said, let's go do it. I only make money if this works. This is performance-based. It is with passion. This is the team of teams. And it's an honor to be here. And it's an honor to be here when we've gotten to know the community leaders. This is an unbelievable place. It deserves a destination resort development. And absolutely, I would say a decent hotel may have risk here. A destination hotel with a world-class vision and architect leading it, it's a home run. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Lori. Thank you.
So I just want to conclude with some of our consultants. So you heard us speak earlier about Julie Peak. Julie Peak is with Masterson Advisors. They are the ones that are counseling us on how to proceed with any special districts, any tours, and so forth. And Howard Cohen is our bond partner, our legal for that. Is Ferris still here? Okay, there he is. Ferris is our representative for Land Dev. And so familiar with the history of Lago Vista, the area. He's done a lot of work with Kelly in the past. We know them as being the go-to for excellence. And then, of course, our general counsel is Will Farrell. Say hi, Will. The principal seller and development consultant. I don't think he needs an explanation or an introduction, but it's Brian Atlas. And Brian has been incredibly generous to us in every way and trying to accommodate us, to let us understand this land and how we can bring a vision forth in it. And we're happy to have him on the team as a consultant. So why Lago Vista and what makes this so attractive? Well, first of all, I want to talk about the fact that we're designing a wellness community. This is a master plan community. And wellness is a buzzword. I know it's, everything's wellness this, wellness that. Well, Global Wellness Institute defined wellness as the active pursuit of making choices that improve your longevity and holistic health. And that's what's the foundation of Waterlight's wellness community. It's one of the hottest markets in the country. Good and Well named Austin, the greater Austin area, #1 destination for wellness in the United States. We're the gateway to the Hill Country. And one of the biggest things in having a wellness community is the fact that you're striving for wellness. So we'll have over 5 miles of trails throughout the community. One of the things that we've identified as being key to longevity and health is to move naturally. It's great to have gyms and equipment and play sports, etc. but just the act of getting out and moving in nature is pretty profound as far as an impact goes. What we anticipate, and we know that we've been questioned about this because Lago Vista doesn't do sidewalks, which we didn't know, but we're fine with that because we like the rural feel of it. However, being a mother myself, and hopefully someday soon a grandmother, we believe that walkability is critically important and it needs to be safe. So depending on where the trails fall within the community would depend on what type of material we would use to support that trail system. Where there's places where it's adjacent to a road and it's not in a ravine, things like this, we'll use hard pack so that this particular trails can support 2 people walking side by side, a child on a bicycle, a mother with a stroller, or 2 golf carts that want to pass side by side. So wherever it's deemed appropriate through our land plan, we plan to support the community with the walkability mode. Another thing that's in line with wellness is farm to table and biophilia. We have beautiful nature here. Just a little bit of time that we've gotten to spend here. We want to make this our home. We're not coming in here and trying to tell you how to change your community. We want to become a part of it. The reason I showed you my family and the reason I talked about life cycle housing is because I want them to be here with me and with our family, as you do with yours, I'm sure. The importance of this image here is to give you some design feel. These are just imagery, so you get a sense of what we're thinking. This isn't design concept, but utilizing natural indigenous plants for our landscaping, because not only is it drought resistant, it belongs here and it looks like it's natural habitat. We work with some of the greatest landscape architects in the world, and believe me, our vision for what we want to see happen will bring back the indigenous plants and flowers and get rid of the foreigners, if you will, that have taken over a lot of the ground. It's just, I think, cypress trees. Again, just some visions of what we see coming in the future. So with that, we'll give you a little bit more detail on where we actually are going with this as far as the hotel. And with that, I'd like to introduce Bill Nord.
Thanks, Larry. So like I was saying earlier, we're here tonight for a zoning request. And it's really not so much a change, but what we envision here is an adjustment to what was previously approved. And what was previously approved were residential homes, condominiums, and a hotel. But we feel after spending a good deal of time on property and walking the property and understanding the topography and the views, that the best use for the hotel is to bring it down to the peninsula. So that's the whole impetus of this request, rather than have it up in the hillside. So there is residential product here. We're going to continue to have residential product in the community, like Lori described. And then part of the hotel is what we call resort villas. And those are extremely important for the viability of the hotel, because what that does is that generates revenue that can be used to create the hotel and also to maintain a kind of an occupancy for the hotel. Those people then get to use the amenities of the hotel, and it becomes a really nice place to visit and use, and it's part of the community. So what I'll show you next is the enlarged portion. Oops, I went too far. Okay, so here you can see the hotel, which is labeled number 1. And then what we have adjacent to the hotel is a pool area and a function area, and that all terraces down the hill. So 6 are the casitas. Those are the suites for the hotel. Those are smaller units that are nestled into the hillside, and those have decks and terraces that look out. They are rentable units for the hotel. That's part of the hotel complex. 3 is a parking structure. It's 2 levels, partially subterranean. When you enter that, you're entering on grade. So it's not a structure coming out of the ground. It's a parking structure that starts on grade and works its way down. And then number 2 there, that's the conference portion of the project. That there, we envision approximately a 7,000 square foot ballroom, and that we can have a lot of weddings, meetings, chamber events, like all kinds of events there. That will seat over 200-300 people in that ballroom. Number 7 up there, that is what we call the resort villas. That's the residential product, and that's the part that I would say is important to the overall development of this. And then number 8 is future resort villas as well.
Excuse me, is that in our packet? No.
We were asked to give further information, and so we developed this plan for your view. The application process that we went through, there's no specific requirements on the level of detail that you give in your plan. And so we worked with Roy to get you as much as we could, as quick as we could, as this process went through.
Okay. I know that other one wasn't in here. I didn't know that one wasn't in here.
No, we have Exhibit A. If we could put Exhibit A up from the packet,
Okay.
that does show those areas. If you have it in your packet, you all have it there?
Exhibit A?
Actually,
Page 14.
a version of this is in here, but it's a little different. Can
Right,
you
and
look
and to
at-
explain that, the reason there's a version
Yeah,
is
get out of his
probably,
packet
some of you were here for
and
the
go to the
earlier
packet.
hearing. We've had some out parcels that were late coming in and became part of our plan. So we had a piece carved out, and then we submitted the application, and then after we submitted the application, we had a parcel come into the property. So it's very dynamic. This was moving on us. So
13 and 14.
that's the reason why we have a second one. You
That's
can see
14.
there, between the 7s, that parcel in there is now under contract. We have that parcel, and we are going to close on that parcel. So that's part of the process we've been going through here just in the last few weeks after we made the application. So I think with that, I just want to emphasize that we're asking for your rezone tonight for this parcel. And there are going to be many times in the future we're going to be able to work with staff, with planning, to give you the answers you want in the detail you want when we go to replat and when we go to show you the additional design for this project. We're absolutely open to working with you and seeing this through to a conclusion. But for this application tonight, we're simply asking for your zoning for this. I do want to mention that we have had a series of meetings with the community members, and we've listened to them and heard what they have to say about this project. And what we heard over and over again was that this property has been derelict for so long, and they really want growth, but they want controlled growth, and the opportunity to do a master plan, they were very encouraged by that. Because if there's going to be growth in this community, it needs to be planned and thought through. And we got a good deal of support for that. And I think some of those people are here tonight, and they'll share that with you. But that's something that I just want to make sure that you understand, that we have engaged the community, listened to the community. Your 2030 plan, I think if you go back and look at your 2030 plan, we've checked the box on quite a bit of what's in your 2030 plan. And I guess just in closing, I want to thank you for your time and just stress the importance of this because of these out parcels and the arrangement we've made with these landowners. We really need your unanimous approval tonight.
Can you go back to can you go to the slide previous to this?
In the presentation,
In that presentation right there?
go to.
Oh, is
his
that's
presentation.
ours? No, okay,
That's
and the one
packet.
that he had, the first one that he had up there. No,
The other one.
one
The
before,
one slide back.
The overall?
the overall, yes.
That one?
That one.
Yes. Because I'm looking at that picture there, and I'm looking at the application. This has lot 67, lot 74 listed as resort hotel, no change, but I don't see that in there. Are you applying for that, or are you applying for this?
I'm afraid I'm not following you. I see this.
See, section
This is what-
7 and 8 that you've got on that?
7 and 8 is residential and condominiums.
Right, but on our map in its application, in Exhibit A,
Lot 67 and 74.
Oh, okay, those
Yeah.
two lots, at the time we submitted the application, we did not have those under control, so we did not show them as being part of the subdivision. We now have them under control, and we are planning to close on those in the
Part
next.
of the application.
okay.
They're not?
No.
So those
So are we-
lots are added?
Yes, we intend to close on those lots and they'll be added. But
Just
just like,
add them in the
just like the other parcels, this has been very dynamic, and I hope you can appreciate trying to assemble 17 lots in this amount of time. We now have additional lots that we want to bring in, but we're going to wait until the appropriate time to bring those in.
They were in, they were out, now they're back in there.
Well, I was just trying to figure, am I supposed to be looking at
This is the most current.
7 and 8, as it's shown up here, or am I supposed to be looking at
Exhibit A.
C, section C with lot 67 and 74 not included and showing,
You can't dynamically add property to the application.
That's right.
You can dynamically omit it, I think. I don't think you can add it.
Yeah, that's what we were told in the very beginning, and so that was why we were delayed in the very beginning, is for that reason. So we're trying to get this right, we're trying to make it right. There's a lot of parcels at play here, but this will be the finished product when we close, right here.
Go to the, Mr. Mayor, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Will you go to the packet, please, sir?
it's page 13, I believe.
Yes, page 13.
And that one shows it as well.
Right.
The part in brown is the part that's not in your application, but it's what he has it now shown as being part of C. And he had it shown as part of C previously.
Let me, and I don't know if you can, go ahead, excuse me, I'm interrupting. Because I'm in the same place the mayor is. That's what we made notice on?
Yes, yes.
And since then, they're proposing to add property. Is that correct?
Not today, but in the future.
No, not, they're not adding that property today. For those two lots in the brown that are next to C, there are no proxies for that. They are they may be under contract.
Yeah, you're
But I
talking
don't-
about the parts up there in C.
That's right.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
so
I
the concept
understand.
plan that
I
you looked
understand.
at a minute
Yeah,
ago
thanks. Yeah. Yeah,
would
I
include that in the future, but your application tonight does not include that.
I would just point out that if we stick on that, your road system is different on that, which is what we have in our backup, than what you are showing us tonight, what you showed P and C and what you said you're going to build. So it's a different development. We've got, your road layout's different.
On C? You're-
Right, because the two lots that are being shown in your other presentation.
We can't, in the application, we did not show them incorporated, but they are conceptually terraced.
Let's take a, I just saw this tonight, but let's focus on H and show us your road layout for H and what you showed P and Z and us tonight. So you go to your exhibit.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
Have to work tonight. Yes.
yep.
right. Okay.
Change the roads.
Well, you can't build a road if one of the lots is out Dorothy Gudgell's place.
Well, again, that's a situation that was explained during planning and zoning, but that is again under contract. We intend to close on that.
Well, that's an Aaron question.
Yeah, I mean, this,
Lot 62.
do I need Will to come up and explain from our end? I'm happy to do that.
I understand, but that's the point I think the mayor's making, that what we're seeing tonight is different from the application in at least two different major areas. One, you're showing that it's going to be something else added to it to include the area where you've got the condo lots, because that property may be under contract, the one next to C,
That's right.
but that's not part of what we're considering tonight
understand.
either.
We were asked to give more clarity for the overall development. I think if you go back to Exhibit A, that's what we're asking for tonight, is Exhibit A, which is in your packet.
You're asking for Exhibit A in the packet, which is different from that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Does the parcel 62 that's not included, does that change the road layout for H? If, I don't know, do I have something that has?
So for purposes of the rezoning application, the piece of property that would be Lot 62 that's at the corner of Shoreline and Austin would not be considered as part of your rezoning. If they wanted to move forward with the road layout, whether it be this version or the version that's in their other presentation, they would have to acquire Ms. Gudgell's property to make that road layout work as proposed. If they are unsuccessful in securing Ms. Gudgell's property, then they would have to propose something different as far as a road layout. But if I understand correctly, Mr. Nord, your request that you're asking for approval today is essentially this exhibit minus 62.
Correct. I believe Roy explained that in the beginning.
I just have a question. We approve this. We're approving the roads?
No,
All we're approving
only
is a
approving the
change in the
zoning.
zoning. We're not
That's correct.
approving the road layout or where the streets go or whether they've got that lot or not.
that's correct,
That's not even
Councilman.
part of this.
That's correct.
What we're approving
I
is
disagree
the
with
change in
that.
zones.
I disagree with that.
Well, the previous approval hardly showed any roadways or anything like that. There's nothing in the application that states that you have to show a roadway layout.
But it has a road layout, and I believe if you have an ordinance that shows a roadway layout in a PD, you're supposed to build according to, in the same way that you're essentially supposed to build the hotel, essentially the way you've shown it in Exhibit A. In other words, it's an elevation that you have to build to. If that's adopted in the PDD, otherwise you wouldn't show it.
Well, I think.
And nor would you adopt it as part of the exhibit.
Well, I think that, and I don't want to, I guess, argue meanings of words, right? But I mean, it's essentially the conceptual plan, right? We still have to come back to the city for approval for, road construction and permits and all of that. So while it is not exact on that, because at the time of the application, we didn't have those lots in Brown under contract, Now, we do and intend to add those, but we will again have to come back and ask for approval of these zoning and the the PDD requirements to apply to those we're requesting tonight. And at the same time, well, not at the same time, but later, we will have to submit on the plating process how the roads are going to be laid out. And it will essentially be the same, but we're not, that's why those lots aren't included in our packet, because we didn't have the authority, still don't have the authority tonight on those particular lots. Does that answer your question somewhat?
Well,
Yes, but I agree with your earlier point, to let's not argue yet.
but my question is, if we go with, as it is in our packet, Exhibit A, which doesn't include lots 67 and 74, how can you add them in at a later time if we haven't approved them as part of the PDD?
Amendment.
So we'd be back.
We have to come back.
Right, there's another bite at the apple.
That answers my question.
Can I ask a question? It seems like you're awful close to having these areas that are in brown, pretty close to buying them. Is that correct or not?
Yes.
So what's the urgency of us approving this prior to you owning these few other areas of land that you are going after?
They're critical to the overall development.
I know those other pieces of property are critical to your development, but you sound like it's gonna happen within the next couple of weeks or next 3 weeks or.
Our investor group needs the assurance that we have this zone properly and that we can move forward with the hotel in its location, the condos in its location, and these residential lots, which we've looked at and done pro formas on. So
is your main focus just the shifting of the two, of the hotel to one area and the condos to the other? Is that basically?
Basically, yeah.
Wouldn't this be easier if you did own it already? It takes that argument out.
This is a big venture.
Well, I understand. I
To put
understand.
this
It's a big
together.
venture and a lot of money, and if you got the capital and you've got proxies and you've got offers on them, close. And then we don't have this.
Our approval with the investor is contingent upon.
We're gonna chicken and an egg here. If you already owned it, then we had a different argument, right?
We would.
Excuse me, I want to clarify something. Not everything in Brown is under contract. The two, lot 74, 67, and 48 are under contract. Lot 59 is not. I can't read these other two. I don't work that well. 55 and 56 are not. Lot 51 is not. And lot 43, of course, is not. And. Lot 43 is not.
Yeah, it is. That's what Brian's.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, it is, okay. But I just wanted to clarify that not everything in Brown is under contract.
But at this time, you do not own this property.
Sorry, sir?
At this time, you do not own these properties.
That's right, we're due to, we
Thank
have contracts in the title company, hard earnest money,
We're here today.
subject to today.
Correct.
That's what it amounts to. Sorry, thank you.
All right. Where were we? Did I interrupt?
Sure, you're right.
Do I? Oh, okay. Let's see what other questions I have. All right, I think that's all the questions I have right now. else?
Well, I just think the difficulty is the bigness of the whole project, you know. I mean, I can grasp switching the hotel and the condos to different areas. And, you know, I mean, your villas, we have no idea what that's about, but I just wish it could be broken up into two sections, you know, similar to how you had your other part that you presented to us that we approved. You know, if you just, if we're looking at swapping the hotel and the condos and then come back with the plan for these other areas, that would be easier for me to grasp. But it seems like it's a all or none proposition that we are looking at here. So I'm just,
Well, I understand. Again, this is a PDD. It's a
Yeah.
request for a rezone.
the rezone, I got
There's
it,
no
I got it.
specific requirements for all this detail. This came up in planning and zoning to a certain degree. And we're happy to come back at replat and
And-
other times to submit everything that's necessary
Gotcha,
to make this a satisfactory project for y'all.
got it. Okay.
Can I ask a question? Isn't this process really to accept the conceptual plan at this point and then later come back and look at site planning? Isn't that typically the way that this is done?
I'm going to answer and I'm going to let Roy add to my response.
Okay,
So for a PDD, a concept plan is not specifically required, but yes, as a general notion, this is the stage where you would look at the concept plan. You don't get into a super level of detail. The level of information that you would typically want to look at this stage is enough information to ensure that the zoning designation that you're considering is compatible with the adjoining land uses. That's the big part of your consideration. So is what they want to use, what they want to rezone these particular parts to, is that compatible with what's next door? For example, there's, in here, there are several brown lots that
Right.
Are unlikely to be part of this project. And they're single-family residential homes, R1A. And is the proposed development, the zoning for that area going to be compatible with what you have? Is it also consistent with your comp plan? And so those are the big factors that you want to look at this stage of the process. You don't get to the minute details. Your site planning process, we're going to look at it, which is part of your subdivision regs. You're going to get into a greater level of detail, including, a traffic impact analysis, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
So yes, there are multiple steps that will come with greater and greater levels of detail along the way.
thank you.
Anything?
No, that's exactly correct. If you're looking for, compatibility issues being resolved in a satisfactory manner, and if something subsequently ends up being fundamentally inconsistent with the concept plan that's presented, then you force them back in for an amendment.
Roy
Well, what
raises,
that means is you're not going to approve a plat or a building permit if it's,
It's fundamentally inconsistent with that, yes. That would be without an amendment.
and Roy raises an important point. Mr. Mayor, one more second. You as a council have unilateral authority to bring a zoning change request, to have that considered. Obviously, the vast majority of the time that zoning changes come before you, it's because there's an applicant, the property owner's requesting to have the zoning for their property changed, but you also have that authority as well, so.
Right. Well, and something I'm looking at this shows like 29 lots on it, right here. Am I-
Yeah, understand, that is the concept plan, earlier approval. I just use that to mark up where everything came from.
All right, so,
Where it is.
so in the area they're looking to rezone, how many lots are in there right now?
Oh, I didn't do a count, but,
1,
probably
2, 3.
'Cause this,
35 to 40.
okay, because this showed 29.
Okay, well, I wouldn't argue with that. 35.
So of course, I don't have the slides that he's got in his presentation. We don't have that in our application, so I'm trying to figure out, you know, my concern, one of my,
What's different between the two?
well,
That
what,
I know. The difference is the 6774 and the other lot down low that they now have.
yeah. Go back to the overall slide, please. So I'm trying to look at this area, and I'm looking at it from a density level and traffic. I'm looking at 25, 29 single-family lots. It says this up here is a hotel, but I don't know, it shows 6 lots there, so I don't know if it's one lot or not. I'm trying to,
Yeah, the old lot pattern is inconsequential.
but I was just trying to compare something about what exists now
Debatable.
Yeah, well,
when it comes to density levels and the streets and the traffic, you know.
What exists now is empty land. I mean, there's no,
Well, I know, but what's it actually approved for? Because this looks like, looking at this,
for 1RA, which is what, 1,200 square feet, and then the CC&Rs come into play as well.
okay, but there's no street pattern or, okay. So in this here map, they're not necessarily individual tracts? Because it looks like this up here is going to be tremendously more dense than what is already, what we have.
So
Yes.
those are
Approved.
70 by 120 lots. Single-story terrace lots. There was a plan in the packet that showed the typical lot for that.
the size and all that.
The previous approval, I think, Brian, was 60.
60 is already approved for that Hilltop. 60 condos are approved for Hilltop.
See, this is gonna be more 60 by 120 and 120 by.
But again, this goes
Yeah.
back to the replat process where we have an opportunity to present to you based on, you know, our real conclusions about the topography and access and all that. We'll come back to you with a plan.
But you've given us a plan, and you're saying don't follow it?
Had I known that you want a fully designed subdivision, that needs to be written into your PDD requirements for applications.
Yeah, let me just read something quickly to track on this, and I agree with the mayor's intent. Here's what the zoning ordinance says about PDs: is the intent of such a district to ensure compliance with good zoning and development practices and adopted land use policy while allowing flexibility of design and certain departures from the strict provisions of the specific zoning classification or development standards, and or to improve and ensure land use compatibility by allowing more detailed public review of development and more strict or additional standards than found in other zoning districts. Now, what we know in the ordinance that's before us is there are departures from the provisions of our zoning districts. And I think we ought to be able to see some detail to justify why that's the case.
I think during the replat process, you'll have all the information. It's,
Well, we won't see
as
that.
Aaron said, the concept is not we're not even held to this concept right now.
So so if what you just said in section 6 might be totally changed from what you have right up there in that picture,
No, I wouldn't say it would be totally.
depending on how we agree with what plats you come up with for that area, it could possibly change depending on how the city sees what you're putting in there.
Oh, yeah, sure, in collaboration, absolutely. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, this is a point in time with a concept to try to get a zoning change. This is not a design subdivision. This is an idea of how this might flow, how it might work, ingress, egress, general, concept of how this development is gonna work overall. Hotel to the south, residential to the north. Streets that are existing are gonna stay there. We're gonna introduce one connector road to make sure that we have sufficient flow back and forth to the peninsula. And that's our proposal.
I think I can clarify something.
Sure.
Can I ask, Brian's part of our team, let me ask.
Get up real quick. There's something we're missing, and I know it's not shown on here at all, but let me just walk up here.
Do you have a laser pointer, Mayor?
See all this land on the left?
Yeah.
To the left of this? That land, I own all of it, except for a couple lots that have been sold, but back in 2008, all that was replatted. And it was a bunch of large lots, just like this. So when I came in here and bought the property, I realized from day one that the large lot program that was there from before obviously failed. And there's lots that have been in there for sale today over here for 10 years, and no one's bought it. There's only one lot that's been sold in there, and that was to Mr. Roberts. So all we're really doing is, this is what is already designed over in this particular area. It's laid out with 262 lots. This is much less dense than what was created in there because they wanted larger lots and bigger homes. So if you just look at it all together, what it's going to become is one big subdivision. It's now going to have a contiguous look and feel of what's already started on this side. So
Okay, so it would be more compatible with Montechino
yes,
then.
it would be more compatible
Absolutely.
with Montechino. It would all be one subdivision.
Because there's two PDDs, we didn't come in with Montechino.
Right, I was just trying to figure out how much more dense this area is going to be, just looking at that and whether that's compatible with the surrounding areas.
Surrounding areas
So-
is actually-
Is Montechino. And that's 262 units.
In that same area.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any questions I'm sorry, Brian?
This was all Marshall's Harbor. And Montechino had already been
Mr. Atlas, please go to the mic so that the folks that are watching on YouTube can hear you, sir.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The entire landmass that you're looking at was all Marshall's Harbor. Marshall's Harbor had 75 lots, large 3 to 20 acre lots. I came in and because there was no market and the city agreed, replatted that entire area. Now, I went through a lot of grief to get that done because there were people around it that didn't like it. But it wasn't really that they didn't like it, they just had ulterior motives against me, which was part of life and part of business. But the reason it was done is because that's what the market determined was marketable at the time. And that, all this is it's actually less dense than that was for sure. This is bigger lots, more beautiful lots, but the adjacent area, which is Montechino, it'll be more looking like what's there. So when you put it all together, it'll be a congruent subdivision.
And just to piggyback on that, areas 6 and 7 is what Laurie was talking about with the trails. And we envision green spaces in there, and play areas unique to that subdivision. So all that has to be figured out and platted, and we have to work with the terrain and work with our engineers who are here tonight. But all that'll work itself into 6 and 7.
Is there any chance that in section 6 that those lots might be wider, creating smaller lots? I mean, larger lots? Is there any chance of that in your plan?
As soon as we have the approval, we'll start some analysis with the builders, and we'll start talking to builders and just see.
Right. That would affect the density that we keep referring to, because you'd have fewer homes on larger lots if that were the case.
Understand.
So here's my problem, my hangup, is when I look at this picture, I feel like I'm coming down Hart Hill and I'm looking at nothing but rooftops, and it just looking at that picture, it just.
Can we go to the packet? The lots are in the packet, is that correct?
They're in Exhibit A. They're both in the packet and in the ordinance.
And then,
Direction. There you go. Keep going.
yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, that's the lot, 120 by 70 for parcel C.
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture what it would look like driving through there.
Well, they're single-story terrace, one view over the other, so they have views out over. And there's,
Okay.
between them, there's a terrace and a green belt, so there's a slope condition that works itself between one level to another.
Do you have any idea what kind of square footage you're looking at with these homes?
So what were we saying, Lori? 3,500?
On 120 by 70? No. The house square footage. It's not. I think.
Was it 27?
You haven't been recognized yet. All right.
So, to answer your question, the typical size for the,
When we were first talking about 2,500 was the bottom.
okay, 2,500.
Okay, I have a lot of people. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
We done with our questions?
For the time being.
All right. Well, if you will, we're going to go ahead and move to the public portion of this one. And I have several people that have signed up to speak. You will have, for this meeting, you have a timer of 3 minutes. And I'm going to start with, I believe, Sam Payne. Is that correct? All right. Is this going to be a,
Are you basically going to do it like you did it in P and Z?
I think that is the idea.
all right,
Not
Okay.
everyone else, but a number of the.
all right, so Sam Payne,
We should allow more time for that.
yeah, hold on.
Sam
Yes,
President.
yeah.
All right, so Sam Payne, William Farrell,
That's me, sir. I just put down there in case I needed to
oh, okay,
address.
that's right, all right. So you're up there. Paul, you're given,
Yes, sir.
okay, so that's 2. Or you, oh, you're keeping marks? Well,
I'll speak for myself.
okay, would you like to do this now? Sure. You're next.
All right.
We have a quick point of order. In the last P and Z, there was some suggestion by Mr. Atlas that we kind of jumped in before his folks were finished. So I just wanted to bring that up. If they had-
Okay. I thought they were finished, but if I'm wrong, No? Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Jim Otwell. I own lots 55 and 59. I didn't ever think I would be back here again, but this is a lot of history has gone into this. This started back with the Sampson Group and Brian Atlas, and this is why this hotel was actually put on the property up on the hilltop. Is that we allowed Brian to go from 26 lots to 262 lots, and also able to put a hotel up on the what we call the hilltop. So there was a lot of promises made back then. I mean, you can see Montecino now, and it's nothing like it was ever promised to us. And I don't know why they don't do Montecino first before even starting on this. Secondly, the issues with the individual lot owners is that I didn't go into contract. I was offered $1,000 per lot earnest money, and then a lowball figure. Most people were offered $1,000 earnest money and a low valuation for their property. Some were offered $5,000 here just recently. But once this thing is underway, there's no guarantee that they will ever close on anybody's property. And so even if they did have me under contract and you guys approved all of this stuff, then I have no recourse after the fact if they don't close my property, because what's done's done. And somebody had mentioned in the P&Z meeting that, well, those individual owners could come back and rezone their own property. Well, that's not true either, because we would be under the HOA, and the HOA would basically say what we can and what we can't do before coming for y'all. So, developers have come and gone. We've been made a lot of promises. Brian Atlas has made us a lot of promises, and to me, it's like deja vu all over again. It's you get a group of people coming in, and they say they've done these great big developments, and they haven't. I've spoken to a lot of the lot owners. I'm really good friends with a lot of the lot owners, and I can assure you that every one of us want to sell our lots. It's not a question as we just want to stop this development. We all want to sell our lots. This just doesn't look like it's reasonable to do, and for that reason, I'm against it.
All right, thank you. That one off.
No outbursts, please.
Let's not have any of the applause.
All right, Paul.
She's having Mitchell.
Oh,
Mitchell's gonna speak for Paul.
Okay, so that's three.
We are one.
No, this is Paul Strusher.
Strusaker.
How do you say the last name? Okay.
Hello, everybody. As everybody gives a brief introduction, I'm Paul Striesaker. I started my career at the National Security Agency as a Navy nuclear submarine officer. Been a resident of Texas for 25 years.
Can we have your address, please, for the record?
18404 Lakeshore Point.
Thank you.
Just down from everybody. And I'm former CTO of Dell, former CTO of Texas Instruments. I make Lago Vista my home. It's where I'm retiring, and it's my primary residence, and it is right on top of everything you're talking about. My principal concern is not about having development. We do need development here. I am very concerned that Montecino has happened, and I've been running through it and past it for at least 5 years, and absolutely nothing is going on. And we're talking about zoning more of the same. The density level, if you go look at it, is high, and even if you tripled the amount of land, it would still be highly dense and very much change the characteristics of what you would probably like to be middle to upper scale development. My biggest concern, and each of you have actually pointed it out, the amount of density that they're proposing. You had that area C and that area H. They were about 12, 14 lots with one house on it, maybe 4 cars. Now it's 100 or so lots. Maybe it's 200. I can't tell, because after all, We have to wait for the magic of the replot. So we, the people who are highly impacted by this, get to understand it. But I lived in Steiner Ranch, and my wife and I lived through the fire at Steiner Ranch and watched it from our house here in Lago Vista. And I think if you're going to move to this level of densification, you're looking at $5 million, $10 million of infrastructure update. Why? You have an entire peninsula, not of just what's under question because you've begun a densification process, which will force everyone else to go dense too. Because once you decide to kind of lower the rail, it's all going to move that way. Most of the big lots will probably only be waterfront, and the rest of it will be overdense. The infrastructure simply isn't there. Any kind of wildfire, like the type my neighbor just had a week ago, in which 3 acres went up and your police and your fire department came up, anything serious, and you'll see, go look on video at the fire at Steiner Ranch. Our friends' kids were caught behind that and there was no way out. That is exactly the situation you're looking at. I speak to you from public safety, and I also think that the development should be done in such a way as not to create high density. We have Montecchino as existence proof that that might not play out very well for this city. You have a structure over there that's so full of who knows what that it should be knocked down. It's probably a hazard. I just think you should think through this a little bit more. And by the way, any deal, as a CTO at Dell who looks at deals all the time, any deal that's going to mystically go in 30 days, let it go. There's always another deal. A deal will pass you by.
Thank you. All right. Ann Murrow.
I've heard a lot tonight. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman, staff. I'm Ann Murrow.
We need your address too.
Yeah, she's
6300 Lynn Lane. Moved here in 1976. I've lived here for 1/2 of my life. Figure it out. I envision Water Lights to become my home eventually, and that will be sooner than later. When I join my longtime friends at dinner at the retirement center that hopefully they will be building too, and catch the bus to the monthly women's club luncheons as I have for 41 years. This multifaceted community called Water Lights will have this retirement center for mom and dads and me. It will be part of a community of large homes suitable for our children and smaller homes perfect in size for our grandchildren. A place for the entire family. Where you golfers might live and continue to have your tea times with your long-time buddies. It's a destination. Finally, after decades of searching for an adequate purpose to act as a destination for Lago Vista, this is the perfect one. It's wonderful. It's a resort with a spa. It will be heard about and learned about for people all around this area. We are so lucky to have this opportunity. This is our decades-old dream of a destination. Hallelujah. It's about time. A dream come true. The hotel sets Water Lights far apart from other developments. Upon arrival in Lago Vista, the only activities were golf and bridge, and so neither were my cup of tea. So I saw a need and started the women's club. Rather than give you all, I'm just going to go down a list of things that I have accomplished and loved doing in this community with others, with the help of other people. I started the women's club. I started the library, which I'm so very proud of. The medical equipment for our volunteer group, wonderful asset. I founded the Chamber of Commerce and the 4th of July Council, serving as its president for 25 years. In 14 years, heading the community's annual Christmas event. I saw many needs in this community. We started out with a couple hundred people when I first moved here.
All right, well, your time's up, Ann.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Vote yes, please.
Next is Deanna. I guess that time's going to Molly, correct? Okay. Huh? Nope. Oh, she's speaking for
Oh, I'm
herself.
going.
Okay.
I'm Deanna Roberts. I live at 5312 Lago Drive. My family moved to Lago Vista just over 3 years ago from Round Rock, where we lived in a typical starter home community. We enjoyed our neighbors and being close to everything, but really wanted more space for our 3 children, so we decided to search for land. My husband and I spent countless hours searching for land from Salado to Hutto to Spicewood. When we happened to find the lot on Lago, we visited, and I knew immediately that it was where we should build a home. It had beautiful views, lots of space, and was quiet. At that time, Brian Atlas was trying to develop Montecino, and he gave us his whole pitch about a lazy river and trails and a cigar bar, etc. We thought they were good ideas, and new development would not affect the acreage-size lots on our street. We took an effort to learn about the community. We started attending church at St. Mary's. I started taking the kids to playgroups at Cody Park. Finally, we are on the path of building our forever house where our 3 kids could grow. Looking back, what I have come to realize is that what I was seeking for my children was a simpler life. They are the most important things to my husband and I. As most of you can appreciate, kids now don't have the opportunity to be free to run and play, get dirty, search for fossils, catch butterflies and grasshoppers, and even go fishing in the lake. Well, you see, after searching all those years, we found that here in Lago Vista and in our current home. You can drive down Lago most nights after dinner and find my kids and I playing kickball out back. Or on summer mornings, my 7-year-old is out with a net catching grasshoppers so he and Dad can fish with them later that evening. You see, we worked hard, and we still work hard, to build a home and a life that we feel is best for our kids. We want to preserve that. We don't want our kids in a suburban neighborhood, or we would have stayed in Round Rock. We don't want condos on either side of our house with vacation renters partying every weekend, making it unsafe for my kids to even play outside. I cannot imagine how many cars will be going in and out of a hotel and all the drunk people leaving weddings trying to travel down our windy, hilly roads. I hope we can preserve this land, and one day people will move here. There are families that are seeking the same lifestyle as we have sought, and they will move here. Let's be their opportunity to have space to be free and run and to play as children should. Thanks.
Thank you. Kristen Williams. I'm going to wait till I know exactly how many I have before I call you up here.
Hello, I'm Kristen Williams. I own property at 18306 Austin Boulevard, which is on the south side of the development, closer to the Montecino side. I'm here to 100% support the Water Lights development. I've had several conversations with the developers, and I appreciate the vision that they're trying to bring to Lago Vista. I think that they've done a very good job of balancing something that has to be commercially viable with something that is seamless with the community, and I think will really fit nicely. Listening to a little bit of the discussion up here, I just did, please, attorneys and planning development, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to make sure that we're focused on the issue, which is the question of zoning. And, I myself have spent 15 years in finance, working for the Blackstone Group, Credit Suisse, a lot of lending, a lot of buying. And, as backward as I agree it may sound, that, yes, if they had this under control, it would be a lot easier to get to that point. But lenders have certain requirements, and I completely understand that. And I think what they're asking for today is to get the zoning in place so that they can close on the financing for this project. And then it sounds like to me they're absolutely willing to work with you on what that density will look like, come back to you and look at what improvements need to be made for the streets to make sure that, there's sufficient infrastructure for fire and these other things. So, I just don't want us to get too caught up in what will it look like? They've been asked to submit plans, and I think they tried to do their best to put things on there that might happen. But I think the real question for today is, can we get the zoning done so that they can close on the properties, which is a concern for the people who are trying to sell. It's a concern for the people around them. So, I mean, in my opinion, it would be in everybody's best interest to fix the zoning at this meeting and then address the density and those issues later as they come back to you for approval of the replat and everything else. So in conclusion, I wholly support what they're trying to do. I think there was a question earlier also about, why has Villa Montecino not worked with its amount of density? I'd also like to point out that Villa Montecino is completely landlocked. So from my perspective, would I go buy a tiny lot in a landlocked place that didn't have access to the water through the rest of a community? No. I think I would personally be a lot more likely to buy a smaller landlocked lot, knowing that I'm a part of a community that has 5 miles of walking trails and a community center and a lot of water access things that I can be a part of rather than just being this separate entity hanging out on my tiny lot by myself. So those, I think, are the differences. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anna Jandro.
Thank you. Anna Jandro, I live at 20808 El Dorado Street. I've lived here for 13 years. This month will be 13 years. Own the property for 15 years. And one of the things that has impressed me about the project and the way it has been presented is that it does seem to be entirely compatible with those things which are special to Lago Vista. The developers seem to have taken into consideration making sure that everything that we hold dear, our nature, the environment, the community, unity being the strong point of community, will remain in place with this particular development. But one of the things I wanted to add, I think everything that we've heard in favor of the project doesn't need to be reiterated by me. But one of the things that I'd like to add is that when I first moved here, my first contribution to the community was to start working on the 4th of July Council. And coming from outside, not knowing what the limitations of producing something in Lago Vista might be, I had all these grand ideas of doing a big production in music. And I kept being told, can't do that because there's no place for people to stay. You can't have a large movement of people coming into Lago Vista for a short concert or the fireworks, and then having to leave at 10 o'clock at night because there's no place to stay. The impact and the change in our economy and our employment and our total environment would be so massively positive by having a hotel that I understand that there are downsides to development, but development that is planned, there are so many moving parts to putting together something this massive, and the first moving part has to be to change the zoning so that this can go forward. I'm totally in favor of it, and I urge you all to vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine Hughes.
Yes, she is.
That's
Hello, I'm Elaine Hughes. I live at 2802 Douglas Cove. I'm the Executive Director of the North Lake Travis Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City Manager. The Chamber of Commerce has the mission to support small businesses and to promote tourism, which in turn helps our small businesses. As presented, the advantages of more rooftops include increasing the base of potential customers for our local businesses, as well as increasing the size of our local workforce, which will be available to our local businesses. The advantages of a hotel would be to provide a place for tourists to stay, which would in turn help our local businesses.
Thank you. Diane, I'm sorry, can't pronounce quite the last name. Diane Bionjo-Pin.
The usual mispronunciation, but it's perfect. I relinquish mine.
Okay, so I add you to the list. Okay. Eric Burkett? Perfect, sorry.
Good evening. Eric Burfett. I represent KSW Nature's Point. We own several acres at 18206 Lakeshore Point. We're in favor of the development. We think this is an opportunity to expand the economic base in the city. Obviously, the tax base increases, and that allows more spending for infrastructure, schools, all of that sort of thing. We've also had an opportunity to spend an extensive amount of time with Mr. and Mrs. Nord and some members of their team, and we're very confident that they can pull this off. Really would hate to see this opportunity to turn what has been an eyesore and a failed development into what could be a crown jewel for the city. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi Swan.
I'd like to give my time to mom.
Karen Pike.
I'd like to give my time to mom.
Christina Lucero.
I'd like to have Ms. Bishop go first, please.
I'm sorry.
I would like to have her go first.
All right, Molly, you're up.
So Mayor, from my count, if Ms. Lucero is not given her time, then she has 5 people, so
15
minutes, Mayor.
Okay.
Is it appropriate to read this from,
I'm sorry.
is it appropriate to read this from Darren Webb? Because this was given to us.
No, that's just like any of the others. It's in our packet.
All right.
I've got
We can
some,
share one.
okay, we can share some of the pins you guys took theirs with them. I had intended these to stay up, but there's information I'll refer to if you all can.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna get you to touch the high points. If I could get pulled up this, the drawing.
Just give us 1 second.
Okay. So while they're doing that, I represent a number of different owners, and none of them want to have no development. None of them say, let's just keep things exactly as they are. The concern is, let's do it right, and more to the point, let's see if this group can do anything. I worked on with the Morse history. You've heard a little discussion on that. I was here for Mr. Atlas's first round settlement agreement in 2007. 12 years later, Via Montecino is still not in good shape. They're asking to move next. Here's something that keeps getting sort of lost in the wash. As we're talking about, they've got the opportunity to do a big hotel, a big spa. What they want to do with it, they have got zoning to do that at the top of the property. They've already got zoning to do a hotel. If they think now's the time, they should do it on their river, on that area of the property, not down in the area that's turned upside down. My clients' homes, their expectations, and their uses of their property. One important thing to remember, because of what you see so often in zoning change, is you see someone who owns a property who wants to just simply change the use of raw land. So what we have here, we have a subdivision that was set until year 2000. Since that time, it's got the subdivision, it's had the plat altered. It has CC&Rs that govern the neighborhood so that when people come in, they get at closing, they get a packet that says, here's what's going to happen with your property. The expectations are different than the typical platting. Can we not find that drawing that
We're working on it.
It's page 26.
Yeah, that shows the change. It is in the packet. So let me hit one of the first points that I think is super important. So this is big picture. You've heard a lot of what's bad for our neighborhood, what's good, what would be important, what would be helpful. But one thing that we have, that is really not addressed, although it was asked at the beginning, is how many of these lots are on, what have they called, proxies? How many are on proxies? I think the answer is all of them. This applicant doesn't own any property that I'm aware of. Everything's on proxy. Many of them, of course, are Mr. Atlas's lots or Via Montechino's, so I guess it's a foregone conclusion that he is going to go forward with it. But the applicant is an entity that was just formed in October, that doesn't own any of these lots, and the platting statute requires that they come to the P&Z, either the owner or a representative. Clearly not the owner, right? LMI owns nothing here, so they come as a representative. Well, they haven't done that properly. Now, if this was something where nobody cared, that'd probably be okay. What they have come to the P&Z and to you folks with is a doctored up proxy that you would use to vote at an HOA meeting. It is not a power of attorney. I've included in that booklet I gave you the statute on powers of attorney that say, if you follow these rules, you can act for someone else in zoning, selling, encumbering their property. It is not acknowledged. It talks about in terms of the voting on my behalf at a subdivision. It doesn't cut mustard, and it particularly doesn't cut mustard. In my legal opinion, your counsel may disagree. This is going to be something that does not get brushed under the rug. So I'm just asking this council to look really closely at this. They had the opportunity to do it, right? And then last time when they were continued, they had the opportunity to go back and fix it when the point was raised to them, hey, there may be an issue with your proxies. They haven't done so. That speaks to a couple things. It speaks to their sort of confidence and respect for this board and this community. And also it just speaks to the issue I'm going to touch on later, which is what level of quality, what level of monetary commitment are they going to bring to this when they can't even get powers of attorney? They mark up their own proxies, and that's what they bring to say, we've got the authority to change the use on all these lots. Well, what's your authority? This proxy that talks about voting at a subdivision. So I bring that to your attention. Again, I've put the statute. I've included in that packet also a criminal law that talks about being a criminal offense in zoning, misrepresenting who owns a property. Not suggesting these guys are criminal. That's not the point. The point of that case is this is really serious stuff. These aren't details. It is very important, particularly given that you have more than 40% of the neighbors opposing this. It's important that everything be looked at and that it be done right or not at all. Next is the property covenants. Now, you all are not looking at enforcing covenants, and I get that. You're here for zoning. Could I get my time up? But it is important to note, and I put at tab B, the property covenants that will govern this. And those are worth looking at because the zoning that's being requested is flat out busts them. Estate lot section talks about these will be the estate lots, provides setbacks, big setbacks because these are big lots. Also provides no subdivision. I've highlighted that area. So those are the covenants that control the entire Marshall's Harbor subdivision. So if you say today this is going to be zoned differently, they've still got to live with this. So it's in large part a moot decision, and it sets us on a path of having to fight that fight. There's a separate set of covenants, and those are the Mickey Redwine covenants. Let me back up by saying every bit of zoning, everything that is on this peninsula was heavily negotiated with the parties, including Mr. Redwine and including Mr. Atlas. And at the end of that, Mr. Redwine and Mr. Atlas did some trading and ended up with a set of covenants that one court has already said are enforceable that talk about the number of condominium lots that can be on that bottom lot at the end of the point. Could I please have that picture back we were just looking at? I'll make 2 points with this.
Can you please try to talk into the mic? They can't hear you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna walk over and point, so.
Take the microphone.
Take the mic with you.
I've got it with me. Okay, it's 49AA, that's one lot. That's the one that had the condos on it, under the current zoning. So we heard in P&Z, and I noticed in the report saying, hey, what's the big deal? You switched the hotel for the condos, what's the big deal? Well, part of the big deal is currently condos are on one lot. what they're proposing, and then the hotel's up at the top. So what they're proposing is a bunch of condos at the top, and instead of just encumbering that one lot, we're going to have hotel parking lots, casitas, all this stuff all the way up from the bottom of the peninsula. So it's not a question of, hey, let's just switch them out. Who cares? It makes a really big difference of one lot encumbered with 56 condos versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 that are going to have a hotel, casitas, and then moving up to the I guess duplexes and similar types of housing. So we're not just switching one lot per lot. It's a really big and fundamental change. We move to something that I do want to spend a few minutes on. It's at tab C. This is the feasibility part of this. Tab C, presumably, I guess the city did this with Nord, but Nord Architects, they did a feasibility study that says, here's what it'll cost, and here's how it's going to work. And what's funny is that Mr. Nord today stood up and said the only way this is feasible is if we move the whole hotel down to the very tip of the peninsula. In this report, he says it's really expensive and hard to have the hotel down at the tip of the peninsula. It would be a lot more feasible if we would move it up. So those are two different things. And if we move it up, we're back into the current zoning and there's nothing that needs to be done. They also talk in terms of feasibility, and I've circled this page talks about different other types of spas and hotels. Talks about Lakeway Resort, long-time resort, selling for $199,000 per room. Well, he tells us this project is going to be $750,000 per room. That's the cost to build what they've described to you. So judge for yourself whether that's something that can be absorbed, whether they're going to do it, whether they can do it, and whether it's a good risk to take. A risk to take for them, fine, if they want to do it up at the top of the peninsula. A risk they're going to take at my client's expense and the other community by wrapping hotels and condos and duplexes around existing large lot estate. They're making the risk on them, not on themselves. This strikes me as a real problematic. I hope you all will have the chance to read this feasibility study because it comes from the mouth of the applicant. And it's already telling us what a dang long shot this is. And Lago Vista has been fed a bill of goods in terms of long shots many times. This looks like one more. I'm going to flip forward. One small piece of their plan includes a marina. It references that in the feasibility. I would just refer you to tab H, where the LCRA has invited Mr. Atlas not to submit any more marine applications for this cove. You can take a look at that because of the restrictions on it. Under tab G is the revocation from Dorothy Gudgel, which we heard today, gosh, it was last minute, we didn't know about it. So that was delivered in September. They've known that Dorothy was out. There's also Kyle Barrow, his properties were the confusion that they were asked about at the beginning. Are they in, are they out? What are you asking us for? So it is fluid. This could have been, Ms. Gudgel could have been included, but was not. Finally, a piece at tab I about these developers. So we heard, apparently they've been involved in every major development in the state of Texas from what we heard before, although when you Google them, that doesn't pop up. What does pop up, and I've included a Houston article about Water Lights 1, Water Lights, which was the project in Pearland, which failed spectacularly, not in 2006 or 7 or 8. The article was in 2010, and it talked about these specific developers that are now saying they're going to do another Water Lights here. Don't be the council. I ask you to approve the second Water Lights 2. I would also include it under tab I, the formation documents for your applicant. And for the folks that say they're doing this, all of these entities are formed in 2019. Water Lights 1 was formed in October, and the others were formed between June and October. I don't have a thing against these folks. I don't know, they may be architecturally, looks like a great architect. The question is this the team? Do they have the depth to work absolute miracle and magic and to fulfill the promises that nobody else has fulfilled before? Maybe they do, but if they do, they need to take that risk up at the top of the property that's currently zoned and not get in and turn my folks' lives upside down. But a couple of things from what I had heard going forward for the beginning of this. One was the discussion of we're gonna shield this. They're hardly going to even see it. We've got shielding, we've got landscaping. Any of you that have driven by this know, and if you look closely at the schematic, the parking garage is about 30 feet from Mr. Roberts' lot line. So the notion of they're not going to see it, it's going to be downgrade, is just wrong. It's going to be wrapped around the Roberts property, and it just is. In closing, I would just really ask the council to think hard at what it means when 40%, I think it's closer to 50, but more than 40% of those nearby oppose something. Keeping in mind another about 15 lots that will be contiguous or owned by Mr. Alice. So to do that math, this is not a supported project by the people who are going to live with it. And these are people who are sick and tired of living in a place that's not developed, that doesn't look good, that has problems. And P.S., why is that? Why is the entry look bad? Why does this have so many problems? Who's been at the helm? It's been Mr. Atlas. So for him to say, gosh, this looks terrible, gosh, this is a problem, well, some of the blame's got to come back. This area does need development, it does need assistance, but not this density, not a hotel with 120 rooms on a lot that Mickey Redwine's restrictions say can only have 60 condos. It's a recipe for litigation and disaster and unhappiness all around. And so I would again ask the council respectfully to dig deep on this and not just look at the short-term promises made by yet another group, but understand really what's at risk. And thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, where'd my stack go?
It's Christina.
Christina Lucero.
Hi there. Christina Lucero, P.O. Box 5464. So in listening to this, just being a voice of reason, the density, the fire speaks out. Having the hotel and the ballroom with weddings and people driving and drunk, like somebody said, all the way back up through the residential and then all the way back out, it does make more sense for it to be up there where there's the easy exit. Of course, obviously no drinking and driving, but that just is something that would make more sense, is having the commercial up where the exit is. And they said something about the villas will be there to generate money to build the hotel, which kind of was a little confusing to me. I mean, I know that we need something like this. And I went to the presentation and I love the pictures and the idea of it, but I'm just scared that that it's gonna end up getting sold to the highest bidder, and that all of the beautiful pictures and ideas might not necessarily end up on them and it be sold to somebody else to the highest bidder. Somebody said that it looked like a desert, but when we chop down everything and build all these rooftops, we're not going to have any nature. And the small little lot sizes with, they said the hike and bike trails behind them, but the next house is just right there on another small lot. People are going to be hiking behind people's houses, and that just, I love 5 miles of hike and bike trails. I'm all about that. That area sat for a long time, and I'm just scared that this might, again, kind of sell out again and not actually happen. I'll take you back a couple of weeks, too, when Paul Roberts is the one who actually got up and talked about the property tax rates. And I remember you, Mr. Mayor, were against it raising, and you had some apprehension with it. And then he got up and he talked about how, you know, we might be entering into a recession and it might be good to keep the property tax rate as is. You guys all heard that. It went into a macroeconomics talk, and you listened to him, and you all voted unanimously to keep it. And I just think that maybe you should listen to him about this as well. He is the homeowner that's right there. And I didn't ever see a retirement community up in the pictures that they showed, but that was the bridge of the gaps between the old and the young. And I didn't see the retirement community up there. Russ Attree came in here and you guys made him come back so many meetings, and his was approved by P&Z. But after 6 meetings, I think that he came in and people showed up and talked about it, it ended up, you guys voted unanimously to not, well, one was absent or refused or something, but he did not get his development like you guys didn't let him. So this being rushed through here and it all happening in one night, and Russ is an active businessman and developer in this community, and these people are not. So I just, if you're not sure about something, maybe sleep on it. Just don't rush something through because you think that that's the only option, because there's always something to come back with. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim Awalt.
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem Council, Jim Awalt, 1909 Loman Ford Road, Lago Vista. I want to kind of change the dynamic a little bit. And what we're talking about is what's good for community. What's good for Lago Vista? What's good for the citizens that have invested here? I've been here 20 years. Everything that I've built and been a part of is quality and style. And I believe in this project, I believe in this team, and I believe the time is right. But going back a little bit, this piece of property has been there for a long time. A lot of you up here know George Eads, George and Susan Eads. He owned that property from 1985 to 1995. He was approved by this is when it was in the Lago Vista ETJ. He had approval from the city of Austin for 700 homes and a marina, and he carried that for 10 years. Well, what happened along the way is the economy turned and he was never able to bring it to fruition. So he lost a little money on that deal, but that's how long this thing's been working. After that came a guy named Steve Morris. Steve Morris had big lots, golf course, big waterfalls, and the only problem was he just wasn't able to pull it together. So he used a company called Money Mortgage. Money Mortgage is in Houston, is who provided him the monies to do what he did. Money Mortgage went bankrupt. My friend Brian Atlas, his brother, his mother, his grandmother, all had invested with Money Mortgage. So when they went bankrupt, he went to the bankrupt judge and said, hey, I'd like to have an opportunity to go look at the files. She threw the keys to him. He opened up the offices, went into the files. Here was a file with his name on it, and it was this property. His wife, Cindy, they drove up here. They saw it. They said, this has got some promise. Let's see if we can make it happen. So he bought it out of bankruptcy. He has put over $10 million in fixing all of the mistakes that he made, had brought water and sewer, oversized for the school, all the lift stations. He has spent $15 million getting where he is today. So it's his turn. Let's all get together and try and make this happen. I mean, we mentioned Mickey Redwine. This guy's got his property up for sale for $16.9 million. He's never lived here. He's never going to live here.
Right, time's
he
up.
de-annexed from the city. And so I'm saying, in conclusion, do the right thing. This is a zoning request, nothing else. Please do the right thing and approve it.
Thank you. All right, Brian, I have a sheet from you, but you've already spoken to us. Is there? All right.
I'm really going to speak as part of the team.
Please go to the mic.
I'm here to speak again as part of the team. And as part of the team, I hope I have more than 3 minutes because I have some very important information I'd like to relate to you not only about my history, which you've heard a little bit about, but answering some of the, I don't know if you call them accusations or whatever they are, but first of all, I have lived in this community for 13 years myself. I did buy this property. It was a problem property because it had a lot of property owners. I actually had agreements with them before I bought it, but unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to realize, because I had 67 other properties like this working for the bankruptcy court out of Houston for a Ponzi scheme mortgage company. So when I came here and realized this property had so many issues, I realized the only way to get the utilities in there to create the value again was to buy all the property and fix it, clean it up, make it a great place, and then find another developer to sell it to. Well, as I got into it, 2 weeks after I bought it, I got sued by a gentleman named Mickey Redwine and a guy that lived in my house, Bob Poe. And unfortunately, they lured me in to buy it, but the minute I did, they extorted the hell out of me. But I learned a big lesson the hard way. And, looking back, I blame myself. I should have been bigger, smarter than what I did. But then I went and made agreements, and during that lawsuit, they sued the city because they gave me a PDD to put 400 lots in this property. So after they did that, the city said, well, we're going to solve this real quick, everything else, but it didn't get solved. A year later, I went to the city and I said, gee, y'all are going to solve this, but in the meantime, let me put some infrastructure in. Let me get ready to go. Let me spend some money, put the utilities in, and at least try to get them down to the cul-de-sac where I was going to build a condominium project. At the time, that wasn't part of the lawsuit. It was just on the west side of Austin Boulevard. So I designed a piece of property over there, got it approved by the city, and everything was fine. When I got started, Mr. Redwine decided he didn't like what I was going to do, so he sued me. Again, I think he sued me. I don't even know how many times he sued me. Every time I tried to start, he would sue me. So finally, I sat down with all the property owners. I said, look, let me come in. Let me give all of you what you want, utilities. Just let me replat this side and increase the density, and I won't do it as big as I wanted. Let's do what makes sense for all of us. And they all said, this would be unbelievable. This would be great. So I was ready to sit down and do what I told them I would do. The lawyers on both sides of the lawsuit and the city all got involved, and we had a big mediation. The mayor was there. They were all part of the solution. I was ready to spend the money to put utilities into every one of these estate lots, except what happened. I get to the meeting. I had all the votes I needed. Mickey Redwine, he didn't want to do it because he had built a marina on my property. And he forged a permit application to the LCRA. And he built it and he got around it. And then I found out about it. I called him and they red tagged and told him to move it out. So he had to come up with a plan to extort me. I know you don't want to hear all this, but he did. And so finally I had something to get him to come around and join us. So we ended up going to a settlement. And who was there? A new face comes in, a guy named Mr. Otwell, with 3 contracts, just enough to stop me from getting the 75% of the votes that I needed. So Mr. Otwell could care less about any of these property owners. All he wanted to do is extort me for the land around his property. That's what he did. He made promises to me in this mediation, and I gave him everything he wanted. And even after that, well, I think you know what he did to the city. I don't need to tell you what he did after that. It wasn't very pretty. Didn't live up to one of his agreements, just extorted me, and I'm sitting here with all this debt. I had no choice but to sell him all the property around Nature's Point for about 20 cents on the dollar is what it came out to be. But that's fine. I'm a big boy. Let's go. So what happened after that? I went for replats, and Mr. Otwell goes, well, I want his property, so I'm going to sue him. I'm not going to tell you who he got in bed with. I think y'all can figure it out. At the end of the day, what did he do? He sued our city. They had to buy his house that he paid $700,000 for from me for almost $4 million. So if Mr. Otwell doesn't like what we're going to do, My apologies. The only reason he had the lots anyway is to extort me. Let's talk about tax rates. When Mr. Roberts moved in, he came to me before he did anything and said, hey, I want to know everything about the subdivision. Well, I gave him a copy of the deed restrictions. I went over what my vision was for this property. I said, you know, it's a locked up, boarded up deal. I'm sure you got a great deal on your lot. Someone wanted out. I said, my vision is one day when these property owners have had enough. Most of them have owned these properties for 20 years. Well, 19 years. Most of them were bought in 2000. Since that time, one lot has sold, the one Mr. Roberts purchased. And I made it very clear to Mr. Roberts what my intention was. Wait for the day when everybody was ready, and we would put all these lots together and find a great group to come in and replat it. I got tired of trying to.
Brian, I'm going to stop you here.
Well, let me just make a couple more things.
Well, I don't want to hear any more story. I want to hear, it's got to be something towards the PDD.
Okay. First of all, Molly Mitchell said that the base, that one little lot at the bottom, lot 49A, was where all the condos were. Well, that's not true. It was lot 48, 49A, and lot 50, the same three lots where the hotel would be going. And what was approved in the past was also an 8-story dry stack storage building for boats. It held 294 boats. It had a parking lot that would have backed right up to Mr. Roberts' property with trailers and trucks, and the parking lot was designed to hold about 100 of those. So every weekend you can just visualize you have 56 condominium owners, and you'd have trucks with trailers going up and down there. I think that's probably a little bit more dangerous than having a few cars coming in and out to a beautiful hotel. She talked about the CC&Rs. Well, the reason we had to put all these lots together and get enough of them is so that with my lots and the lots they're purchasing, the Nords would have 75% of the lots in the subdivision so that they could revise the CC&Rs. And every one of these contracts with every person, including a couple that were opposing us, had a clause in there. We're purchasing your lot for one reason, to rezone this subdivision. Also, you're agreeing not to oppose our zoning in any form or fashion. Well, a couple of them did. I didn't want to make a big issue about it, but everybody that signed the contract had the same contract and agreed to the same thing. In trying to honor their feelings, that's where all this confusion was of lots in, lots out, and all that come up, and we're sorry that happened. But our intent was not to try to disrupt things. It was trying to make and accommodate everybody, the people that wanted in, the people that wanted out. But all these lots are under contract. If the Nords don't close on these lots in 30 days, all of this goes away. Give them a chance to make this a real subdivision. It is the best thing that's ever happened to this property, best thing that's ever happened to Lago Vista, and I'm 100% behind it. I live on the street, right down the street from where it's all going. I have the biggest lot in the whole neighborhood, and I'm very glad to have it down there. I think it's great for me and my family. Thank you.
All right, so that's all I have to speak. Does anybody have any questions, comments? We're back to that point. Council discussion. Anything? All right, this is the first consideration. So unless I have somebody request a consideration of question, we will leave the public hearing open and we will pick this back up on November 21st. All right. Sir?
Can I speak, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Our request was asking for a vote this evening.
Okay, well, it's denied. We're going to take this back and consider this over the next 2 weeks because we've got a lot of information that we've got to look at. And I think 3 hours and 19 minutes is a little fast to try and make that decision.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. All right, number 2. The Lago Vista City Council is holding a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City Council of Lago Vista, Texas, amending Section 5.10, 5.85, and 6.105 of Chapter 14, the zoning ordinance to add procedural and substantive requirements for a criteria-based discretionary site design review of all multifamily and non-residential development prior to permitting.
Let me find it.
And we'll wait just a second.
75. 75.
75.
Thanks.
Can you read it?
I think so, but is that an initial at the beginning? Yeah, okay.
Well,
No? Okay. Is this a public hearing? All right, it is a public hearing. I will go ahead and open the public hearing at 11:19 PM.
Yes, sir. I spent the staff report explaining how we got to this point. And probably didn't spend enough time explaining how it works. The reality is that you see the criteria that's listed in the ordinance. It basically tries to describe the issues that we're concerned about when you put non-residential development in very close proximity to residential development, which is basically the entirety of the community. That was never more borne out than the recent multifamily project that was being looked at on Boggy Ford. Small piece of property next to other small pieces of property, real concerns about how you make those compatible. Basically, this is a requirement that says, here's what we're concerned about. If you want to get rezoned, you're going to show us how you're going to deal with those issues. And it'll be part of the requirements. If you already have the zoning and you haven't gone through that, you'll have to do that as part of the permitting process. It'll go in front of P&Z, subsequent to a staff report, no public hearing required, but the standard will be the same. The only difference is, obviously, you'd rather deal with it up front, ideally, but we're not going to ignore property that's already zoned. They'll all have to meet the same requirements. I can go through the long, boring history of how we got here. In many ways, it supplants a recommendation in the comprehensive plan for, what they call overlay districts or some reasonable facsimile thereof. We think this is a more comprehensive approach and deals with all the problems instead of just one of them.
Yep.
But I know the comp plan talks about overlays.
Right. It didn't say.
But it also, as you point out, has a number of other places where it says we need to deal with the design other than.
Right. And that's our point. And it overlays it, there's various types of things, but overlays are basically talking about geographic locations.
Correct.
We're saying, doesn't matter where it is.
Correct.
Do it everywhere. That's the difference.
I pushed this hard because it was causing a lot of confusion.
That's your word for it. I would call it more than that, but he didn't threaten bodily harm, but he threatened almost everything else. He said, I'm not going through this no more.
That's correct.
Get it done.
Correct.
It's high time. What we were waiting for, the criteria, for example, we've talked about mixed-use district in the future, okay? If we create one, I'm gonna have to add the criteria. I'm lazy. I would have rather waited and got the districts right first. I'll live. If we add and change the districts, we'll look at the criteria again and adjust them.
All right. Questions, comments? I don't have any.
Mr. Mayor, is this something we have to wait on? Or it's still a public hearing?
Well, it's still a public
It's
hearing
still a public
first.
hearing.
But with anything, if somebody calls consideration to question, makes a motion for considered question,
Gotcha.
we can take action on it.
Got it.
All right, is there anybody in the audience? Nobody signed up to speak on this item. Is there anybody that would like to?
Not me, Mayor.
You're getting up.
You made a move to the mic.
All right. With that being said, unless I have somebody make a motion, we're going to
Well,
leave.
I gotta wait for you to close the public hearing, right? Don't I have to wait for him to close the public hearing before I can make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Thank
To
you.
consider, if we,
It's,
I have to close it for him to make the motion to consider it?
if he's going to request that you're going to, if he's going to make a motion to,
To
take
take action
action,
on this item.
the hearing has to be closed.
All right,
He can request that you,
I'm trying to look at my cheat sheet here.
It's gotta be. What part of the?
Consideration of a question. I don't have that on here, but is that an action or is that does that allow me to close the public hearing?
he's requesting that you close the public hearing so that he
Right.
can make a motion on the actual
Right, so
item.
that's what that's not what we consider a consideration?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Mr. Mayor, but if I were in your shoes, what I would inquire of the council, is there any objection to considering this?
Okay, that's what I was trying to get to, but I was trying to do it by Rosenberg's rule. All right.
No help at all.
I know. You're gonna have to go back and redo this, Arch.
This is too confusing.
Do I have anybody objecting to closing the public hearing?
No.
All right, then I will close the public hearing at 11:25 PM. Now it is open for possible action.
Mr. Mayor, I make the recommendation that we can approve this ordinance with amending section 510, 5.85, and 6.105 of chapter 14 of the zoning ordinance to add procedural and substantive requirements for any design review that's required on multifamily and non-residential development prior to permitting and providing for related matters.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. Okay, number 3, action item. These are all action items here. Number 3, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding ordinance number 19-11-07-01, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, closing, vacating, and abandoning a portion of the street right-of-way commonly known as Mount View Drive, authorizing conveyance to the abutting property owners by quitclaim deed and providing for related matters. Who has the lead on this one?
Mayor, I want to give a kickoff on this. Roy developed a staff summary that, as always, is very detailed and provided you more than what I'm probably going to say. This is similar to actions that council's taken previously relating to property that is adjacent to other properties. So not property that has been included in the strips judgment that we've dealt with before, but property that may not have a value to the city that could potentially have a value to to an adjacent property owner. So what we have in front of you is an actual ordinance that would do everything that the mayor just read and would convey this property to, I believe it's 2 adjacent property owners, to allow them to include this as part of their property.
It's an unimproved bump on the right of way.
It's right away.
Is it?
It's right, yeah, it's right away.
They have
It's not
50/50
the actual
ownership in it,
street.
or
I'm sorry?
is there 50/50 ownership in it, or is
No,
it split?
it's
No.
way more, it's 3 lots, one of which is not even very important to, you know, it's very important to one person that owns 2 lots.
Oh, all right.
It's one of those strange radial property line situations. You might even call it a flag lot, if that, you know, in a lot of ways, but it's a lack of frontage issue, why they have the bump, but they're not gonna develop it that way.
Council, if you refer to page 105, that shows you the shape of that drawing. That's 105 in our packet, and that'll show you, I think that's labeled as Exhibit A3 there. That shows you the size of it, and then it shows you the lines, and then it clearly depicts the property that's in question, and then the goal of staff to sell this property back to these individuals.
Some clarification. It's abandoned right away, and we're going to abandon by quitclaim.
Yes.
The way this works, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the property would be abandoned to the parcels that are adjacent, according to extending those lot lines down to the paved part of the street.
That's right.
So what people get is a function of the way those lots are configured. And then I think before they can build anything, they got to plat it, got to plat that property. Question. We're not going to prepare the meets and bounds description of where those lot lines go.
Their surveyor already has.
Thank you.
Is this the case where the person built the house across? Okay. And so he's essentially, the way I figured it, he's essentially trying to purchase 2/3 of that area between him and the other neighbor that he's got. And he's offering $5,847.
He jumped the gun.
Right. Now, if he was doing this correctly, would he not have to join those 2 properties? You know, after buying that portion?
Should have done that later.
Right, he should have done that and then joined the properties and then put the house where he did. So, wouldn't he actually have had to have paid a fee to do the joining?
Well, he's still gonna have to do that.
Oh, he's still gonna have to do that?
Still gotta do it.
Okay. Well, that's
I'm
gonna
not
be,
forgiving any of that.
okay. All
Basically,
right.
he's
Well, that's
asking-
what I was,
He's asking for forgiveness rather than permission.
right. That's the way I saw it
He's doing it
too.
out of order.
Okay.
He presumed this was gonna happen.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that we,
Consulting,
But at this point, he's trying to make it right.
yeah.
and we have our only issue was don't abandon the apartment, all or nothing. That was our issue. We don't want any fun shades left.
Got it.
Right, but he's still gonna only purchase 2/3 of that and,
The other one's going to a trust,
okay,
who doesn't need it very much, but they'll take it.
right, because it doesn't
And he's
add much
gonna have to
value.
pay for the platting of that too,
Okay.
and has agreed to do so.
Got it.
This is his surveyor's drawing and meets the boundaries.
Well, after going out and looking at this, we're not losing anything as far as the city is
Ready to
concerned.
plat it, but he kind of thought this was a formality. It's a little more than that.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that we tag on the fee to do the joining of those 2 properties, but it's gonna happen anyway, so,
We're not forgiving him anything.
okay.
That we get away with not forgiving.
All right.
Okay.
He screamed at me, to be clear.
Will you entertain
All
a
right, if
motion?
there's no more questions, I will entertain a motion.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, wait, time out.
Oh, okay.
I have to make sure there's nobody in the audience that would like to,
Weigh in.
anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this agenda item? All right, now, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we, that we adopt ordinance number 19-11-07-01.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. Number 4, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding ordinance number 19-11-07-02, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, adopting the most recent official city map of unincorporated municipal boundaries and extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Lago Vista, requiring a copy of the map be filed in the office of the city secretary and the office of the city engineer, providing a savings clause, severability clause, effective date, open meetings clause, and providing for related matters. Who's got this one?
I just figured if I started talking, Roy wasn't going to go to the mic. So I think Roy should have to walk to the mic, Mayor. He's only been in front of a microphone for 7 hours today, so.
Hey, Sandra says that's nothing till you've been here till 4 o'clock in the morning.
And now that he's at the mic, I don't want to say anything, Mayor. So here's Roy.
We've had some annexations, disannexations, and various things, some of which predate me being here, that you're supposed to do those, and then the official map is supposed to automatically happen, or somebody's supposed to see that it happens. But the previous staff and folks didn't. We bumped across that because after I got here, I heard about the disannexation between Jonestown right there that happened, with the interim city manager and the contract city engineer and those kind of things. And believe it or not, I was looking at a plat and I was saying, well, this map's wrong. And then I got with Chris and tried to find out how that happened. Turns out there was a bunch of 2017 annexations that occurred before I got here. Those weren't updated either. So basically, we were holding on to all the ones, and we were trying to conglomerate them as much as possible, including the disannexation you just recently did with the other gentleman in Jonestown. But the straw that broke the camel's back is, if we're going to sell the house, we better get the map updated since we've annexed that previously. So no more waiting. We brought this to your attention.
Sorry. Change that.
Don't tell Roy that one.
We have a surprise in store for you.
So can we just do this at every meeting, just in case something might happen?
How about we just put it on the next agenda just in case, theoretically?
Can we put this as a standing action item?
Yeah. Well, Josh told me, he said we better hurry on this one.
We'll do the map in pencil.
There you go.
So in case there's a change.
We are now caught up. There's another annexation pending that it might have come about, but turns out there's an old mud that had to go bye-bye before they were willing to annex, so we left them out. There was only one more.
Yeah, what you do is you adopt the official zoning map when you do the annexation or disannexation. Therefore, I move to approve ordinance 19-11-07-02.
Before I can accept your motion, I have to open this up to the public to see if anybody would like to comment. All right.
Move approval of ordinance number 19-11-07-02.
I second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. Almost passed that before I took a vote. No.
Pass it on the second.
Number 5, you can't leave. You're the only one speaking.
Meeting's over.
Number 5.
This is the best item.
Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding the sale of real property located at 18001 Marshall Point, Lago Vista, Texas.
Mayor, I'm going to kick this off, if you don't mind. We did have two previous owners here tonight that left us before this. City Council authorized the staff to advertise the property located at the address you mentioned for sale. We advertised the property on October 21st and October 22nd in the American Statesman, on our social media, and on the city website. We opened the bids yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock. Since we received that, we received one bid. The bid, we did have two discussions with individuals, and one individual didn't get their bid in on time. So we received one bid. It was a valid offer, and it was received by the deadline. The bid is for a total offer of $1.85 million for the property. There is one special provision in the purchase document, and that is that the city would either supply water and wastewater services to the property line or allow for disannexation of the city, from the city. So the act that we just finalized, they're asking to squash that and accept their offer. Surprise!
We wanted to wait until it really had a lot of impact at 11 o'clock at night.
I could have taken this one before number 4, but I just had to wait.
You know, they always say the 11th hour, Roy. This was the 11th hour. And this is.
If y'all knew, like, how Sandra hovered over me on Thursday afternoon.
Mayor, I did follow up with the proposed buyer's agent, spoke with the agent, made sure everything was still intact and that they were ready to go. We did receive their financial information, and so if council were to approve this, they would be ready and willing to close in the very near future.
Excuse me for a minute. Fred, are you here for the BOA change?
I think you were going to talk about it, but it's really interesting just to listen.
No, I think, we're planning on doing that on the 21st.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Been here this long.
Yeah, I know. I've been staring at y'all night long going, what's she interested in?
We just can't leave. We're having too much
She's
fun.
chairman of the BOA. So.
Well, I've watched her all night. She's very good at multitasking.
Oh, yeah,
over there.
she's got a sweater already.
We're going to have a whole suit before we go.
So
Do we have any questions, comments from? All right, anybody from the citizens that would like to ask a question or address council? Okay, well, at this time, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make the motion that we authorize the city manager to complete the contract for the sale of the house at 18001 Marshall's Point, and that the necessary paperwork and ordinance be developed to de-annex the house at the completion of sale.
I will second.
All right.
Tim.
Tim.
Collins.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous.
Hallelujah.
The ink's not dry yet.
I know.
Not over till summer.
Yeah, it could be tomorrow early.
If they heard what the previous purchase was for.
Yeah, well,
Maybe they weren't listening. All right, number 6. Discussion, consideration, and possible action on a Texas Parks and Wildlife Department grant agreement approval and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
Mayor, I'm going to kick this item off. This is the second grant that we received from Texas Parks and Wildlife for the development of our new city sports complex. As we all know, we've started on phase 1. This grant is for phase 2 of the construction. In order to accept that and basically commit to the matching funds from the city and to commit for the items that were included in this grant, we need to accept that grant and complete that grant agreement. This is the exact same process we did for the first grant that we received from Texas Parks and Wildlife.
My packet says Eric is supposed to come up here and
I figured he didn't want to get up, but he's there now, Mayor, so feel free to ask him any questions.
I'm here.
I have no questions.
Council, if you do decide to make the motion, please do mention and allow or authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
Execute the contract.
All right.
Where are we in phase one?
Phase one, we are working on dirt work. The contractor from Dallas didn't realize that we have rock down here, so they,
Another one.
Oh, no.
so that. But they're working on it. We figured out a way. We did the redesign of the project. Nothing that you guys need to worry about. So we reduced the quantities from 30,000 cubic yards of rock and dirt down to 15,000. So they're good to go and they're moving forward and still on schedule.
Okay,
There's actually some level plots out there already.
okay, good.
All right.
Okay.
Is that it from this side? Anybody in the audience would like to ask a question or make a comment? All right, at this time I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we execute the grant agreement approval and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. Number 7, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding resolution number 19-1817, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Lago Vista, Texas, confirming the appointment of a presiding municipal judge for the City of Lago Vista, Texas.
Mayor, I'd like to present this item to council. The current presiding judge for our municipal court is Judge Robert Durbin. He was appointed in December of 2017 to serve a 2-year term as the municipal judge for the City of Lago Vista. The city charter, section 4.03, states that the municipal judge and any associate municipal judges deemed necessary shall be appointed by the city manager and then subject to approval by council. What we decided to do was to open this position up due to the fact that we have gone the 2-year period and we had interest from individuals currently on in our court as judges and from others outside of our current municipal judges. City staff put together a request for interested candidates. We assembled a panel that included the city secretary, excuse me, the court administrator, Sergeant Frank Aloka from the police department, and myself to review, then interview, and then select the best candidate. In doing so, we had 5 applications for this position, which showed us that there was some good interest. We selected the top 4 out of the 5. Their scores were similar and high scores. We interviewed those 4 candidates, and we selected Mr. Jay Caballero to be the recommendation to City Council for this position. The process was a fantastic process. We had some very good questions that we were able to talk to all the applicants about, and to get their questions, to get our questions answered, gave us some insight into how we would like to see court operations happen moving forward. The way the system's set up in municipal court for Lago Vista is we have clear separation between our responsibilities and duties and interaction in executive, legislative, and judicial. What we do have in terms of reviewing that process is a set-up system for every 2 years. This is when that review can happen, and we want to use that in this democratic process. Although the charter states that the city manager will make this recommendation, typically our team interviews individuals and makes decisions based on a team basis. We assembled this team of 4 based on our desire to have the court administrator and a member of our police department be present, as well as the city secretary and myself. City secretary has extensive experience in the municipal court system. And so we went to Chief, give us somebody that you think would be a good member of the panel. He sent us someone, and we went through this process. The applicants were great on paper, and they were even better on during our interview process. As I mentioned, I believe we would have done well with recommending any of our 4, but there are some differences that came out during the interview process that made our recommendation the best fit for Lago Vista Municipal Court.
So who are the 2 judges that you got? The one judge, you said his name is Jay?
Yeah, so our recommendation is Jay Caballero.
And who's going to be the backup judge?
Well, Judge Spindler was reappointed recently by the council to serve a 2-year term as the associate municipal judge. So he will maintain his role. We currently have, so Judge Durbin is the presiding judge, Judge Spindler is an associate, and we have Judge Madison as an associate judge as well.
Okay.
So as of today, we have 3 judges, and moving forward as of December 1st, we would have a judge and 2 associates.
Got it.
All right. Any comments, questions? Anyone from the audience? All right. This time I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to recommend or move to approve Resolution 19-1817, filling in 2 places the presiding judge name of Jay Caballero.
I second the motion.
All right, Dick got the second.
Okay.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. Consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are to be considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Number 8, approval of the October 3rd, October 17th, 2019 special called meeting minutes and October 3 and October 17 regular council meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve all 3 of the minutes that you just called out.
All right, before I accept that motion, is anybody in the audience who wants to comment on our minutes? All right, now will accept your motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Arch got the second. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the minutes are approved. City manager report.
Mayor, I have a couple things to point out real quick for council. One thing that we've been working on for quite some time in this community, and that the mayor and I were privileged to be a part of the discussion today, we've been working with Cap Metro to provide some options for service delivery here in Lago Vista. And we met with them today. They're actively working on some new service options. Can't wait to be able to go through that in greater detail. But I think with our conversations today, we are potentially, our community could be a lot better served by a new service delivery that we're trying to bring Cap Metro into the fold. So we're very excited about that. Just want to let people know that it is something that we're working on, and it's something that we've talked about for a number of years. And hopefully the people in the community will be happy to hear when we're able to roll out a new plan. So just excited.
Is it a ferry?
You know what? It could be a ferry at some
That
point.
was discussed.
We've discussed that with them as well. So I think there's a lot of options on the table. And for our $500,000 a year, we want to get some kind of value. And it's something that's big enough that the community will hopefully care moving forward.
Well, and I want to add to that and say, nothing, we don't know for sure, but we're looking at about March, April, around the 1st of April timeframe to see changes.
I do want to check with council. I mentioned that after the election, I'd like to schedule the retreat date. I don't know what schedules are coming up, but as we mentioned before, we could get together as soon as the 18th, 19th of this month. It could be the 20th, so Wednesday. I know we talked about which one of those days work, but I don't remember what they are.
Got the chamber luncheon on the 20th.
That's the 20th, okay? That's the Wednesday then, so the 18th will be Monday, 19th will be Tuesday.
When's the Region 10 thing that we signed up in Bryan?
December 3rd?
Oh, okay. So chamber luncheon,
The following week would put us to
7/10.
Thanksgiving week, so that was a little
13th.
difficult.
I worked
19 sounds better.
I worked fire station on 19th.
So maybe the 18th?
Sounds good.
One day.
We would go the whole day.
We still have the mansion?
I'll have to check the dates.
Well, we don't own it anymore.
Where are we going to meet?
Well, if we've got it, then that'll be our day if we're going to be here in town. If not, we'll
And
call
have a
our
f-
friends at the POA or,
And have a farewell party.
yeah.
Yeah, so the 18th or the 21st.
So 18th, 21st is a council meeting.
Oh, that's
18th
right.
is
So-
no good.
18th a no-go?
It's the retail strategy, 6-hour work.
Oh, yeah.
What was the 19th?
I'm at
you
the
were
fire
working.
station.
Stupid 19th. I mean, in theory.
Can't do the
we could-
20, can't do the 21st.
We could do the 21st. You just got to be ready for the
We
council
could do,
meeting.
well, you can't do this Friday, the 22nd. I'm back at the fire station.
I'm saying,
Sunday, the 24th.
it depends on what everybody's schedule is on the Thursday of the council meeting, Mayor. We would just make sure that we wrap up.
21st?
What if we did it on the 20th after Ed got off the fire station, just start at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock and go a little into the evening?
You just have to commit to how late you're going to go. I mean, we've got a long list, and this is to get us into that vision planning.
I got a long list. If we do it in one day, that'd be great, but
Or are we doing this all in-house or are we looking at?
For this one, we'll in-house, but then we're going to come in and bring in basically a moderator or a strategic planner to get us kicked off in the strategic planning process. But we're going to discuss that. So another option, Mayor, we could hit the afternoon of the 20th, the morning of the 21st, and then you're breaking well before council.
Yeah.
That would work.
That'll work.
Split it up into a couple hour set, a couple 4-hour sessions.
We're not staying too late on one day and.
So you coming off of how long a
So,
shift are you
so the
coming off?
afternoon on the 20th and then,
Well, it's 24 hours, but I'm at a fairly slow station.
and then the
so-
morning of the 21st?
Yeah, I'll send that to you. We'll check. I'll get with Sandra. We'll send it to you and start laying out some ideas, and that'll get you. So if you got ideas we need to be hitting,
Okay.
so I'll send that to
On
you.
the 20th, it'd be after the luncheon and after he gets,
20th after the lunch, 21st the morning.
Yeah,
And then our goal would be to finish up by lunchtime on the 21st.
gotcha.
Okay?
Well, since I don't get off at noon, I'm not at the luncheon, so y'all will be done by the time I get there, so.
Yep.
Roughly.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, future, where am I at?
What time did we set that for to start? Did it say it?
1 o'clock.
Future meetings, consider schedule and items for future council meetings.
Yeah.
I have one thing. I need to appoint a mayor pro tem at the November
You're gonna
21st.
need to know location.
And when are we doing have we scheduled what do you call it? Where you certify the results?
Canvassing?
Canvassing.
I have to get the official results, so it all depends on when those are ready.
Okay, do you schedule that or does the state schedule that?
so that'd be a special meeting?
Okay,
Yeah, but I only need two.
Yeah,
Just has to happen
Okay.
before the
The
18th.
afternoon of the,
before the 18th?
The 18th is the last day. that you can canvass. But you might not get the results until the 14th, the official until the 14th.
I was going to say, what if they don't get us the results by the 18th?
They said they'll have it by the 14th at the latest.
What time does it start?
Yeah.
Yeah, Travis County. They're on my list.
Anybody else have anything for future meetings? Schedule? I got all that. Anybody have anything for executive session? All right, I will call this meeting adjourned at 11:57 PM.
Still, Jay.
That's right, I made it before midnight.
Almost called it.
Do they even play a football game if you don't even know that it's on because you've been here 3 hours?
I don't know, my fantasy team is all on bye this week, so it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna lose.
I got a tape.
I'm gonna